Chapter 22-29. He walked out of the Witch of Turbidity's room, which meant that he had been in this room since a long time ago, before everyone arrived. Silence. After the silence, only the Witch of Turbidity's voice slowly sounded. Why did you come out? The Witch of Turbidity's words instantly proved that his guess was correct. I was awakened from my afternoon nap, so I came out to see what happened. Captain J in front of the door smiled slightly. I thought your place was a quiet place. You can't blame me for this. Miss Witch lowered her head and muttered in grievance. Didn't these people come for you? Captain J didn't say anything. He just casually glanced around and then walked down the wooden steps directly toward Princess Angelique. Seeing Leader J walking towards her, the ruthless Royal Highness looked around with a hint of bewilderment until Leader J arrived in front of her. What do you want? Her Highness gritted her teeth, and her voice was slightly angry. Your hair is dirty, Captain J said softly. He reached out and swept away the dust on the princess' hair sword. At the same time, he combed Princess Angelique's messy hair with his fingers. Don't touch me. Princess Angelique was stunned at first, and then she suddenly raised the lightsaber in her hand. Just like how she used it to kill Prince Desolate, Her Highness at this moment was just as ruthless. However, Captain J quickly grabbed Her Highness' wrist that was holding the lightsaber. Her Highness had no choice but to bite her lips. Captain J began to use his hand to loosen Her Highness' fingers that were holding the lightsaber. Finally, under Her Highness' unwilling gaze, he took the lightsaber. Princess Angelique loosened her lips, but she also snorted softly and turned her face away. I wanted to. At some point, Prince Desolate also came to Captain J's side. He stretched his neck and leaned over. His appearance was very similar to a husky that was rubbing against its owner's arms. However, Captain J only used the lightsaber's hilt to lightly knock Prince Desolate's head. You're biased. Don't mess around, Captain J said indifferently. Prince Desolate directly sat on the ground angrily. What a harmonious atmosphere! Not far away, senior sister Yulia widened her eyes and pinched Madanzo's face with both hands. She said in disbelief, Senior, look. Unbelievable! Madanzo rolled her eyes and stepped on her senior's toes. I'll prove that you're not dreaming. While everyone was still digesting the changes, King of Swords had already arrived in front of J.S. Captain. The haughty Imperial General suddenly lowered his head. Crown Prince. In an instant there was complete silence and even more silence. His senior apprentice sister had already known about it. She was pretty close to the truth. At this moment she wasn't too surprised. Madanzo, on the other hand, seemed to be deep in thought. However, she was unable to calm herself down. Crown Prince. The words that came out of the Imperial General's mouth obviously couldn't be false. In addition, the fact that he could easily suppress Princess Angelique and force her to hand over her weapon proved his identity. The first successor of the Empire, the second glorious son born from radiant moon after the founder of the Califar land, the mysterious Crown Prince of the Empire. Captain is the Crown Prince? Daphne's mind exploded. Captain is the captain of the circus? Isn't he a magician of the circus? So, he is the Crown Prince of the Empire? Kaliana scratched her head as if she had lost her father. We had so many chances when we were on the airship, she said as if she had lost her mind. Unlike the reactions of the people who knew J.S. Captain, a drowning dog's leader, Yi Yen was extremely calmer than ever. This was because he had to think about a problem. These heirs of the Empire all appeared in this place at the same time. Was it a coincidence, or was it something else? Yi Yen subconsciously looked at the Witch of Turbidity. The Witch of Turbidity shook her head slightly and cast a meaningful glance at him. Yi Yen's leader could only smile bitterly. Who are these people in front of me? They are the real big shots of the human empire. I'll have to trouble you to treat these injured people. In the distance, J.S. Captain suddenly turned around and said. The Witch of Turbidity crossed her arms and turned her head to the side. She snorted and said, When did I say that I care about you? J.S. Captain smiled and said, I know that you are the kindest. You won't leave them to die. I'm heartless. Miss Ing gritted her teeth and stomped her feet before turning around and entering the house. J.S. Captain turned to Yi Yan's leader and said, She should have gone to get medicine. Move your friends in first. Yi Yan's leader subconsciously touched his neck and nodded. Okay. This incredible guy seemed to have become the leader in an instant. Here you are. J.S. Captain weighed the lightsaber in his hand and threw it to the King of Sword, Dijuan. Dijuan took it and put it away. Seeing this, Princess Angelique snorted again. Dijuan, I want this weapon. Send it to my mansion later. The King of Sword nodded expressionlessly. J.S. Captain smiled and said, This weapon has accompanied Dijuan for his whole life. Don't be naughty. If you like swords, ask a Desolation Uru to make some for you. Naughty? Her Highness suddenly sneered and squinted her eyes. Is this the tone that a younger brother should have? J.S. Captain didn't panic. He skillfully held Her Highness's hand and lowered his head to kiss it. Sister, can I? I don't want it. She hurriedly shook off his hand. Her chest was obviously beating. Her hand was kissed, but she didn't know where to put it. In the end, she could only hold it in front of her chest helplessly and step back. All of a sudden, she seemed to have bumped into something. Prince Desolation was standing behind her with a smirk on his face. Princess Angelique was shocked in an instant. At this time, Prince Huang whispered in the princess's ear with a voice that could make people die, Can I, big sister? Can I, big sister? The shocked Her Highness's eyes turned cold instantly. She turned around and held Prince Desolation's face with both hands. The two of them looked at each other. Prince Desolate blinked and revealed an innocent smile. Princess Angelique also showed a big smile. Then she twisted Prince Desolation's neck with both hands, making the sound of bones breaking. Die again. Prince Desolation dead. Thank you. King Sword said coldly. Captain J said indifferently, When I wasn't here, I heard that you have been helping to take care of my study room. I should be the one thanking you. King Sword said indifferently, It's just His Majesty's order. Captain J smiled indifferently and turned his eyes. His eyes fell on the silent black-robed man, Emperor Kai. You are the second glorious son of Radiant Moon? Emperor Kai said in a low voice. The metal dragon bone on his back creaked again. A faint dark red steam slowly emitted from Emperor Kai's body again. Don't boast. Captain J said indifferently. I know how powerful you are. You should also understand that you can't die for nothing, right? Emperor Kai stared at him, and the dark red steam around his body dissipated bit by bit. The metal dragon bone gradually calmed down. This is for you. Captain J suddenly threw something to him. Emperor Kai subconsciously took it. He looked down and his face changed slightly. He said in a low voice, The key to the dragon bone? Why do you have it? I found it on Cicero, Captain J said indifferently. I think you can use it. You are crazy. Do you know who this guy is? Princess Angelique rushed forward instantly and grabbed the collar of Captain J. She gritted her teeth and said, No matter how mischievous you are, I will listen to you. But you can't forget your identity. Do you think I am mischievous? Captain J asked softly. Aren't you? Princess Angelique said angrily. Then just take it that I am mischievous. Captain J sighed slowly and reached out to touch the princess's cheek. Just like before, come and correct my mistake, sister. This time, you don't have to listen to me. What did you say? The princess's eyes were dazed for a moment. It was because Captain J had punched her in the abdomen. Seeing that the princess lost consciousness and fell on Captain J's body, Prince Desolate couldn't help but open his eyes wide. He whistled casually and was surprised. "You come too." Captain J suddenly looked at Prince Desolate. Prince Desolate, who had just been revived and his neck was still crooked, didn't react. He suddenly felt a terrifying will enveloping him. The moment his consciousness collided with this will, it was instantly scattered, and he fell to the ground with his head raised. Crown Prince. The King of Swords General Dejuan frowned. Captain J said slowly, "The execution time tomorrow will not change, but Angelique and Desolate will be added. Also, go back and tell Fushi that if Leviathan wants to use it, he can use it. I don't care anymore." "I'm afraid not." The King of Swords General shook his head and rushed out like lightning. But a powerful force bounced the King of Swords General away. A golden emblem faintly appeared on Captain J's forehead. After that, Captain J picked up Princess Angelique and Prince Desolate, one in each hand. Then, he floated into the air and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. It was like a magic trick. Where is that deadhead?" At this moment, the Witch of Turbidity walked out of the house with 2 big shells and looked at everyone in confusion. "What? Poverty?" In a very simple house, everyone sat on the ground. The Witch of Turbidity had just slapped the floor with both hands. The King of Swords General sat upright. "Ms. Ing, the situation is critical. Let's put the past aside for now. I need to know the Crown Prince's intention to judge what to do next." "I don't know," the Witch of Turbidity said angrily. "How do I know about him? That unreasonable guy always comes and goes as he pleases every time. Every time he shows a little respect, he thinks that people will agree to anything he wants. Who does he think he is? Trash. Bastard. The worst guy. But I'm afraid that the Crown Prince has already come here before us." The King of Swords' eyes narrowed. He said he was tired. The Witch of Turbidity snorted coldly. "So he wants to sleep with me, sleep here. That's it?" The King of Swords frowned. "Believe it or not." The Witch of Turbidity snorted. "In the end, this is your radiant moon's matter. What does it have to do with me who he wants to kill? Why are you still here and not leaving? What is the meaning of this? Then, I'll take my leave first." The King of Swords was very straightforward and left his seat. He opened the door and closed the door. Everyone stared blankly. The Witch of Turbidity looked like she didn't care. But soon, a trace of fear appeared on her face. Dirty things should be cleaned up. Outside the house, the King of Swords' voice suddenly drifted in. At the same time, a powerful light directly penetrated the wooden house's window and pierced into the house. A huge and terrifying sword light instantly hacked down on the peach blossom's wound. The huge sword light actually split the peach blossom into 2. In the huge pit of the peach blossom, a head popped out of the soil and coughed hard a few times. Senior Yulia hurriedly looked around. She saw that everyone around her was like groundhogs, sticking their heads out of the soil one by one. The sword of the King of Swords was really meant to annihilate everyone here, but in the end, the person who blocked the huge sword light was Senior? She looked at Madanzo, who was closest to her. Madanzo softly nodded, but her gaze was cast into the distance. In the distance, Yen was digging out the little girl Tomorrow from the soil. The one who blocked the sword light was actually this little girl with an eye disease, Tomorrow. Now, she was unconscious. "I can't be angry. I can't be angry. I can't be angry." Take a deep breath, take a deep breath. Think about happy things, happy things. "I can't be happy at all." On the other side, the Witch of Turbidity was grabbing her hair in distress, and her face was extremely pale. Her face was really pale, the kind where dark clouds covered her head. What's that sound? At this moment, Daphne and Caliana had just rescued each other when they heard a rumbling sound. The deep ditch that was created by the sword light actually began to tremble slightly at the same time. The water is coming over. At this moment, a raging flood suddenly rushed into the deep ditch, the sewage of the Holy Land's drainage system. F***CK. This is. Senior Yulia's expression changed drastically. Dimensional reduction strike. Run. Chapter 2230. Night, 8 p.m. sharp. In a lake in a man-made courtyard in the Holy Land, a huge water column suddenly shot out, stirring up the lake. Waves crazily crashed onto the shore, and then figures were tossed onto the beach. Full marks, full marks, full marks, flops, flops, flops. Young master, are you okay? You are indeed reliable, Babalia. Madanzo patted the noble deacon's shoulder vigorously and jumped down from his embrace. Around her, many members of Drowning Dogs were stuck on the beach like green onions. Almost all of them were safe except for the Witch of Turbidity. For some reason, half of a statue buried in the sand appeared where she fell. The iron-headed Witch of Turbidity was in a half-dead state, and her head was bleeding profusely. Quickly take a look at his injuries. From afar, the voice of Yenis' leader could be heard, and the scattered members of Drowning Dogs started to gather. Even though these members were almost killed by the King of Swords earlier, after applying the Witch of Turbidity's ointment, they recovered very quickly. Now that they had encountered such a disaster, they only looked a little pale. Senior Yulia walked quickly to Witch Sakura, lifted her up, and slapped the witch's face twice. Hey, wake up! Her face was swollen, but the Witch of Turbidity showed no signs of waking up. Miss Yulia, I still have some leftover ointment. Ointment? Oh, Daphne? Okay, come here. Senior Yulia nodded and let go of the wounded witch. She glanced at Daphne and said, what's on you? Because she was wet, many parts of Daphne's body were in a shallow state. It's nothing. Seeing Senior Yulia's gaze, Daphne quickly squatted down and began to apply ointment on the Witch of Turbidity. Senior sister Yulia shrugged. When she saw Metatro and Babalia walking over, she hurriedly went up to them. Senior. Metatro scratched his head and said, looking at the situation this time, I'm afraid we'll have to deal with the villain as the male lead. This is really troublesome. The key was that until now, the other main antagonist hadn't appeared yet. There wasn't even any news about her. In the final world, he could still learn from Oizi that he had a target he had been looking for as a clue. But in the page world of the Holy Land, until now, Commander J didn't seem to have shown his purpose. Ms. Yulia, I've applied the ointment. At this moment, Daphne walked over timidly, and intentionally or unintentionally, she tugged at the corner of her clothes. The half-soaked clothes made her look rather perverted. Daphne, 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 Daphne. Mr. Commander? Senior sister Yulia nodded and said, for example, what does he want to do, his goal, his original intention, and so on? I don't think so. Daphne shook her head subconsciously. I didn't hear him mention it. Senior Yulia thought for a while and said, doesn't he have anything he wants to do? As the crown prince of the empire, he runs a circus all over the world. He can't be so free, right? I didn't know before. So, Commander is. Think about it carefully. Senior Yulia pressed her hands on Daphne's shoulders. Think about it. This might be important information related to the future of this world. I'm sorry. I really don't know. Daphne still shook her head. It's okay. We can't force it. Senior Yulia suddenly comforted her softly. If you think of something, remember to tell me immediately. I really don't know what the commander's purpose is. Daphne shook her head. But the commander once said that the circus has to constantly change places because the novelty of staying in the same place will soon wear off. Only children will never get tired of the same thing. Senior Yulia couldn't help but think. Daphne said, actually, I haven't been in the circus for very long. Maybe Mr. Qin Tian and the others will know more. Qin Tian. Senior Yulia's eyes narrowed, and she subconsciously looked at Madanzo. Madanzo also looked at her with a similar gaze. That's right, too many people with mysterious identities had appeared one after another, so much so that they had subconsciously forgotten about the characters that were commonly used in the page world. Senior, where are they? Maybe they are still in the Empress Manor. They are placed there as gifts. Senior Yulia thought for a moment and said, the effect of the godless realm has disappeared. Senior, should we go there? Madanzo was about to answer, but Babalia suddenly walked up and said, Young master, that guy is gone. Kai? Metatro frowned. At this time, there was no trace of Kai Huang on the beach. Could it be that when he rushed ashore, Ms. Kaliana is also gone? Daphne also exclaimed. Just as they were confused, Yi Yen walked over with a group of subordinates. Guys, I think you can tell me something about the Crown Prince? The members of the Drowning Dogs quietly formed an encirclement formation at this moment. Madanzo said calmly, Leader of the pirates, the witch's paradise has been flooded. It's not realistic for you to move the refugees in the sewers. Currently, under the death mark of the god-destroying weapon Leviathan, no one can safely leave the Holy Land. It's only half a day until tomorrow noon. The leader of Yi Yen frowned and said, Do you have a solution? Madanzo shook her head. Not at the moment. Not at the moment, which means, there will be in the future. Yi Yen said expressionlessly, When you're at the end of your rope, you have to do anything. Do you want to cooperate? The key is the execution at noon tomorrow. Madanzo said quickly, As long as the execution fails. But we don't know where the Crown Prince is. With so many purge knights, imperial generals, and even the god-destroying weapon, we can only wait, right? The leader of Yi Yen shook his head. How can we stop it? Then we can only depend on her. Madanzo's gaze landed on the Witch of Turbidity. Perhaps only she can give us the answer. Do you think she's dreaming now? Yi Yen looked at the Witch of Turbidity subconsciously. When everyone's gazes landed on her, they saw that the demoness of Turbidity's body had suddenly started floating. A deep black light shone from Miss Ying's body. Her hair spread out without wind. At the instant she opened her eyes, what was revealed was a pair of pupils that seemed to be filled with chaos. I see, a sad world, a stage, that's a stage. The Witch of Turbidity raised her arm lightly, and her finger pointed at a huge pillar of the Holy Land. What's that? Yulia asked subconsciously. A monument. The leader of Yi Yen said in a deep voice, A monument for humans. It's a monument for humans made from the bones of a mythical alien race on the mythical battlefield. The god-destroying artifact, Leviathan, was much bigger than the other two mysterious artifacts owned by the royal family. Its body was like a floating island. On a huge platform on the Leviathan a white figure landed. The royal knights standing on both sides of the platform knelt on one knee solemnly. The white figure walked forward. In front of him, the King of Heaven of the Empire, Fushi, was leaning against the railing and playing with the Rubik's Cube in his hand. Your Highness Angelique, His Highness Desolate, was also taken away, the King of Sword Di-Jun said directly. He was executed at the same time as His Highness Cicero. This time, it's the Crown Prince. It seems that you already know? Fushi didn't stop playing with his hands. I just knew who did it a little earlier. As for the relationship between Her Highness Angelique and His Highness Desolate, I didn't know until now from you. You look very calm, Di-Jun said with a frown. Aren't you worried at all? Crack. The Rubik's Cube suddenly fell to the ground from Fushi's hand. The King of Heaven slowly looked at the King of Sword, Di-Jun, and his expression gradually changed. First, his cold eyebrows softened. Then, he began to pout and said pitifully, Di-Jun, what should I do? I'm going to die, I'm going to die. This time, I'm really going to die. What should I do? What should I do? I haven't retired yet. I still have hundreds of houses and more than 100 villas to pay for. My monthly salary is only so much. This time I'm really going to be fired by His Majesty. You. The King of Swords' eyebrows twitched slightly. The King of Heaven knelt on the ground and hugged the thigh of the King of Sword. How do I know? How do I know that the Crown Prince is so tough? Didn't I just say that I wanted to scare you a little? Do you really think I dare to activate a Leviathan? Only a Leviathan can be used by me, okay. How do I know that Leviathan will directly release the death mark as soon as it is activated? I'm going to die, June. Go away. No, I won't. Only you can save me. The other guys are having fun in the Nirvana Ocean. Only the two of us are left in the Holy Land. The King of Heaven hugged his thigh tightly and refused to let go. Have you forgotten the oath we made on the battlefield? If we live together. If we die together. I've even prepared a tomb for the two of us. In an instant, a huge sword light suddenly exploded on one of the corners of the god-exterminating weapon Leviathan and soared into the sky. Go to hell, trash. The King of Sword coldly lifted the tattered King of Heaven and threw him down from Leviathan. He really threw him down. On the platform, the group of royal knights, who had been affected by the aftermath of the sword light and had fallen left and right, looked at all of this with a terrified expression, trembling. After throwing down the King of Heaven, the King of Swords swept his gaze across and the royal knights couldn't help but shiver. Right now, who is controlling Leviathan? The King of Sword asked in a deep voice. It's Sir Bismay. A royal knight trembled and said, Sir Bismay has gathered all the technicians in the Holy Land. He wants to remove the death mark. Sir June, bring me there. The King of Swords said in a deep voice and strode out. A few royal knights hurriedly led the way. On the platform, the remaining royal knights crawled out from their hiding places with lingering fear. The royal knights swallowed their saliva and hesitantly walked to the place where the King of Heaven threw Sir Fushi down. At this moment, they saw a figure sneakily climbing up the railing. Sir Fushi. Shh. The witch's prophecy appeared, and then the witch fell into a deep sleep again. According to Yi Yen, this was the after-effect of the Witch of Turbidity every time she had a precognitive dream. The duration of her deep sleep depended on the intensity of the precognitive dream. A sorrowful world. The stage of the monument. Our goal is clear. After deciphering the content of the precognitive dream, everyone quickly discussed and quickly decided on a few simultaneous actions. Then, let's not waste any time. The leader of Yi Yen looked at Madanzo and said, We're dealing with the Crown Prince of the Empire. With such inhuman strength, we can only gather as many people as possible and pile up our heads. We'll think of a way to inform the royal family. Madanzo nodded and said, Whether we succeed or not, the next place to gather is the monument of mankind. I hope you're trustworthy, the leader of Yi Yen said calmly. If you can trust me wholeheartedly, I might become omnipotent. Goodbye. Wait, I'm serious. Senior, they're leaving. Madanzo shook her head, shrugged, and said with a sigh, Humans always ignore the truth and only foolishly follow their own beliefs. Then, Senior, what beliefs do you follow? Yulia quickly rolled her eyes. Of course, it's the truth. Madanzo smiled casually. Then, she put the pipe in her mouth and raised her fist, saying, Let's go. Let's go to the manor. Shouldn't we inform the royal family? Madanzo said calmly, We don't need a whole night to inform them. Besides, I'm more curious about the life of this crown prince. Don't you think it's strange? Madanzo said, You've met Carrot Hero, Azi and Little Ya's brother. Are they really the type of people who would execute their loved ones? Yulia rubbed her chin subconsciously. Well, if it's the boss? The monument was engraved with the names of countless human warriors who had died. It was a huge diamond-shaped pillar, and it was almost as tall as the airships parked in the airspace. The top of the monument was smooth and clean. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the monument as if he was floating in the water. It was Prince Desolate. At this moment, the prince slowly woke up. He blinked his eyes, sat up, and looked around. Then, he suddenly stood up. In front of him, there was a chair, a table, and a cup of tea, and a guy with long silver hair sitting there. It was the world prince, Cicero. Prince Desolate walked to the opposite side of Prince Cicero. He blinked his eyes and said, "Uncle, it turns out that you are doing bad things." The world prince chuckled and shook his head slightly. Then, he glanced at his feet. The prince's feet were shackled. The chains were connected to the monument as if they were one entity. "I'm just allowed to come out and take a breath of fresh air." Prince Cicero smiled and said, "As for you, you won't die anyway. Before the time comes, chat with me so that you won't run around." Prince Desolate narrowed his eyes and smiled. He sat on the ground and said, "Okay. I like to chat with Uncle Cicero the most." Chapter 22:31. A few heads popped out from the bushes and began to size them up. They had returned to Princess Angelique's manor. The members of the Cirque du Reverie might still be considered a birthday present from Count Decria to the princess, and they might be under house arrest somewhere in the manor. In Madanzo's opinion, Senior Yulia's ability to gather information was definitely at the max. Therefore, after a short discussion, the two of them directly split up. As long as they didn't encounter a member of the royal family who could activate the unreasonable, godless realm, their safety was still very high. Even if they couldn't compare to this mysterious Senior 11, they should have no problem protecting themselves. Senior Yulia happily agreed. Moreover, the King of Swords general probably didn't have time to pay attention to her at this moment. Therefore, after seeing Madanzo leave with Babalia, Senior Yulia quickly chose a direction to sneak in. The guards of the princess's manor were even worse than before in the middle of the night. This was because there was a death announcement sign above everyone's head. Everyone was in a panic. Even the guards couldn't take care of themselves at this time. In fact, along the way they passed by the residences of many nobles. The Holy Land was already in a mess because of Leviathan's activation. Although the manor wasn't out of control at this time, it was like a string that had been twisted to the limit. Could they really only take one step at a time? On the way to find the members of the fantasy circus, Senior Yulia subconsciously thought about this question. If they were just going to be passive like this, why would the boss let them continue to stay here? The pages of the Holy Land were all in his hands, okay? This was a game where they didn't care about the results at all. A game? No, it was too hasty to describe it as a game. However, the boss said that the pages were already in his hands, so there was naturally no need to lie. With the previous experiences, Senior Yulia knew that every page world evolved from the contents of the diary on the pages. However, evolution required a foundation, 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 and even something that had happened before. The content of the page also indicates the final direction of the page world. Since we've obtained the page, it means that we know the end of the world in advance. What does the boss care about? Senior sister, Yulia, felt that her IQ was a little low. Perhaps it was because her divine soul had exploded once when she was in the scenic Donremy village, which seriously affected her ability to think. Wait a minute, we already know the ending, but we still need to pay attention to the process. Process? Since he wasn't participating, he wouldn't be able to enjoy the process, right? In other words, like a Qingtian thunderbolt, Yulia suddenly stopped, and her heart skipped a few beats. She blurted out, "Is there a hidden ending beyond the pages?" Suddenly, "Let me go, I beg you." A series of noises came and instantly interrupted Yulia's train of thought. In the corridor before her, two women in black were pressing a girl in female clothes against the wall. The girl in the maid's clothes was carrying a backpack. The backpack was tilted, and the things that poured out of it seemed to be valuable items. It seemed that this kind of situation would happen easily. When a catastrophe was imminent, the servants in the family would try to take away some valuable things from their masters. It seemed that the princess's manor was no exception. In fact, the princess's manor was in a good condition, and robberies had begun to appear outside. Under the sign of the death announcement, many people only hoped to escape from the Holy Land. If it weren't for the fact that the first noble who drove the airship to escape was shot down by Leviathan, all the airships in the Holy Land would have escaped by now. As for the woman in black, she was probably one of the soldiers who were loyal to Princess Angelique. She had no intention of making a move. Until the two women in black took the maid away, Senior Yulia was eating a melon that she had picked up from the courtyard on the way. After they left, she casually pushed open the door of the crime scene. The room was unusually messy, and many cabinets and drawers had traces of being rummaged through. It looked like a study room, but didn't Senior 11 say that the princess's study room was actually an arsenal? It's probably a document processing room or something like that. It didn't seem to be worth searching. After Senior Yulia casually flipped through the basic booklets on the table in the room, she finally confirmed the nature of this place. It turned out to be an accountant's room. If it's an accountant's room, there should be a gift list. Oh, I found it. This is it. When she picked up the gift list, another list floated out. Senior Yulia casually picked it up and glanced at it. Her eyes froze. This seems to be the list for the banquet? What's this attached? Help! There's a fire! There's a fire! A series of rapid screams suddenly sounded. Senior 11 couldn't help but frown. She saw a touch of fire outside the window, and it quickly spread. It's been a night full of misfortunes for this manor. Senior Yulia couldn't help but shake her head and muttered, "This Senior 11 really doesn't care about small things." Instead of spending time looking for it, it was better to let the target take the initiative to come out. The fire was actually set by Babalia. Madanzo promised that she didn't give any orders. She just briefly analyzed it. This was all thanks to Babalia's wit. He was sitting on a roof and using the scope from the sniper-type extinguisher. He looked around the manor. Oh, I found it. In the burning manor, the members of the fantasy circus were carefully looking around. Then, they quickly ran into a courtyard and nervously observed the surrounding environment. "Mr. Qingtian, why did the manor suddenly catch fire?" "Who cares? The messier it is, the better. I didn't want to come to this place. I don't know where the leader is now. There seems to be a path over there." The beast tamer, Qingtian, who was almost the vice leader of the circus, quickly pointed at an arch in the courtyard. "Let's leave this place while the guards can't take care of themselves." It was as if there was a pair of mysterious hands helping them. The guards who couldn't avoid them had fallen to the ground before they arrived, until they successfully climbed over the wall from the back of the manor. It was a close call but not dangerous. "Cats, take the others to find a safe place to hide." "What about you?" Cats looked at Qingtian in confusion and asked. Qingtian quickly said, "After I deal with the traces of escape, I'll catch up with you. Okay, be careful. I'll leave a mark on the way." Cats didn't hesitate at this time. He took the circus people and sneaked into the woods behind the manor in the night. Until everyone disappeared, Mr. Fairsky finally let out a sigh of relief. It looked around, but the surroundings were dark and there was nothing out of the ordinary. Qingtian slowly said, "Although I don't know who you are, I'm really grateful for your help. Can you show yourself?" "No need to thank me. If you can, please answer some of my questions." The voice came from a big tree not far away. When Qingtian looked at the source of the voice, he saw Madanzo, who jumped down from the tree with Annihilator. "Aren't you?" Qingtian couldn't help but stare. Madanzo squinted at this time and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Beast Tamer, can you accept it?" Qingtian was stunned and frowned subconsciously. Go ahead. What? The leader really? Really? Madanzo tilted her head. So, Mr. Beast Tamer, you seem to know something. For example, the purpose of your leader? In the night, Qingtian just pondered and didn't speak. Madanzo directly approached and said, The situation is very bad, worse than you think. The deadline is tomorrow noon. Obviously, I don't want to die tragically under the judgment of Leviathan. I choose to protect myself. I hope you can also choose to be honest, Mr. Beast Tamer. Qingtian suddenly sneered and said, Like you, pointing a weapon at someone's chin, is it a choice? It's not easy to be a good person these days. Madanzo chuckled and said, It's not as good as being a bad person. You don't have to worry about the so-called law, morality, and so on. You can also throw it aside. Qingtian said indifferently, It's useless even if you kill me. The leader is the kind of person who will not change once he decides to do something. If I'm not wrong, you actually came back to us at this time to use the people of the circus as a bargaining chip with the leader? Madanzo didn't answer directly, but said indifferently, Babalia, it should be done. Are you waiting for me in front? The direction he was looking was the direction where Kaz led the people into the forest. I said, the leader will not change what he has decided to do. Qingtian shook his head, even if you tie all of us up in front of the leader. Madanzo shrugged, I have to try. Besides, you don't want to say anything. I can't make a trip for nothing. After all, I have to gain something. After all, I'm not an angel that everyone loves. Annihilator shot at the lowest power and a bloody hole appeared on Qingtian's left thigh. At this time, Madanzo said indifferently, For the time being, I'll have to trouble you. After a while, they saw Babalia carrying Kaz, who was full of iron armor, slowly walking out of the forest. He directly threw Kaz at Madanzo's feet. Young master, except for a pet bird, all of them were knocked out. Babalia said without changing his expression, Pet bird? Madanzo frowned subconsciously. A little blue bird flew away in the chaos. Senior. Under the night sky, a faint shadow flew down quickly and then became solid. Yulia couldn't help but blink after landing. In front of them, apart from Madanzo and Babalia, there was also a car. The car was probably driven out from the manor's garage, the kind that was very large. On top of the car, the people of the Cirque du Reverie were piled up like a human pyramid. Senior, what are you doing? As if understanding Madanzo's intention, Yulia couldn't help but ask hesitantly, You can't be planning to use these guys, right? Madanzo's expression suddenly became serious as she stared closely at Yulia. She subconsciously covered her chest and retreated. What are you doing? Yulia, since you've never told me your real name, I'll continue to call you Yulia for now. Madanzo said with a serious expression. Your astral creation technique, how big can it create, like the temple in the Wraith realm, is that the limit? What exactly do you want to do? Madanzo raised her head and waved her arm. How about we steal that thing? A divine destroyer artifact. Leviathan. Senior sister Yulia immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. She instantly forced herself to calm down and said with a frown, Let's not talk about the king generals on Leviathan first. There might be 2 king generals that are not easy to deal with. I heard that over 10,000 knights are needed to control Leviathan. Furthermore, I've spent too much in the previous page worlds and lost a lot of soul power. Let alone Leviathan, even a slightly bigger house would be a bit difficult for me. But newbie. Madanzo narrowed her eyes and said, You're always full of excuses, but why are your eyes so greedy? You're showing your true nature? Senior sister Yulia was taken aback and subconsciously frowned. If she had a star creation creatures that was presentable, that would be the case. In an instant, Miss Demonis of the scholarly faction in her subworld bit her lips and said, This one. I'll bet on the big one. Below, there were bright flames like fireworks. From the second half of the night, the devouring flames ignited everywhere in the Holy Land. It was like a bonfire, completely stirring up the emotions of the people in the night, causing them to go crazy amidst the oppression and fear. A small figure flew across the night sky, and its gem-like eyes saw everything in the Holy Land. It was still flying, and its flapping wings cut through the airflow. Its feathers seemed to emit a faint light like stars. Suddenly it found something. With a flip of its body, it swooped down and landed on the top of a bell tower in the Holy Land, on the shoulder of a black-haired and black-eyed young man. After the blue bird stood firm, it rubbed the young man's cheek intimately, but it soon stopped and made a clear voice like a human child. "Jay? You've got the wrong person." The young man smiled and said, "I'm not your commander." The blue bird's eyes flashed, and a hint of doubt appeared in its smart pupils. "By the way," the young man said, "at that time it seemed that I gave you to her as a pet. Before that you had been following me, and now I have a little impression." "Her?" The blue bird showed a more doubtful look, and its eyes flashed a few times. The black-haired young man. Boss Luo said softly, "Your name is Roddy OSS." Roddy OSS? Chapter 2232. It was the sound of wings flapping. The blue bird flew away from Boss Luo in the next second. Took away its name and the memory of getting this name. Soon, it even forgot the name it took away. It didn't remember that it had stopped somewhere and seen a guy similar to Jay. Soon, it landed again. This time, it landed at the human monument. The blue bird bumped into the monument, and its body disappeared as if it went through a water curtain. The interior of the monument was like a disordered building block. A large number of three-dimensional spaces were piled up on the ground. There was no pattern to speak of. In the independent spaces between each other, the body feeling was normal. Even if it was seen from the outside, the people inside were standing in a slanted position. J. Ladios? In the slanted independent space in the house, Captain J was sitting in front of a simple long table, wiping a small black wooden stick, the kind of magic tool that magicians often used, which could make flowers appear. The blue bird stood on the table and instinctively combed its feathers. "Are you alone?" Captain J asked calmly. "We slipped out of the manor, but Qing Tian-u and the others were captured by those guys who came with us on the airship." "It doesn't matter." Captain J smiled. He tapped the magic wand on the table casually a few times, and some bird food slowly poured out of the magic wand. "Those people are actually quite interesting." Feeding the bird seemed to be a comfortable thing. Captain J stroked the head of the blue bird affectionately. "By the way, J, I have a question." "What is it?" "Why am I called Ladios?" Captain J was surprised for a moment and asked curiously, "Why do you ask this?" The blue bird showed a confused look. "I'm just curious about the origin of the name." Captain J thought for a while and said, "Ladios is Ladios. The name is just a symbol. If you don't like it, you can change it to something else." The blue bird shook its head. "No, I think the name Ladios is good enough. You rest first." Captain J patted the little blue bird's head and stood up. He jumped out of the slanted room and quickly jumped into another inverted room. In this inverted house, Princess Angelique was sitting upright on a chair. This was the only piece of furniture in the inverted house. Not only was she sitting upright, but her hands were also placed symmetrically on the armrest of the chair. She was actually unable to move. "Why did you capture me and bring me here?" Her Royal Highness didn't panic. Instead, she appeared particularly calm. Captain J smiled and said, "I told them that you, Cicero, and Desolate will be executed tomorrow." Princess Angelique couldn't help but frown. "Execution? Let's not talk about Uncle Cicero for now. If you can really kill this fellow, Desolate, it can be considered a good thing." Captain J went behind the princess, picked up a bunch of her hair, took out a comb from her pocket, and began to comb it. She couldn't see, she could only feel, but her eyes couldn't express it. It would seem that you've truly treated the matter of killing Desolate as your life's great undertaking. Princess Angelique sneered. Is it wrong for me to do this to a monster that is born by eating its mother? Don't tell me that this isn't his intention. He is just innocent. If he isn't wrong, then my hatred is naturally not wrong. You don't need to care. He changed another bunch of hair and continued to comb it. He said lightly, I just feel that if a girl's lifelong undertaking is used to fight and kill, it is a little bit of a spoilsport. You don't want to be the crown prince and perform the so-called cheap magic everywhere. Isn't it a waste? Princess Angelique snorted softly. It is indeed the first successor. Captain J said indifferently, but it is only the successor. That majesty can live since the mythological war until now. She will probably continue to live like this in the future. There is no difference whether she inherits or not. He created you, created me, created the Desolate, and also created her. Perhaps it is because of that shallow sense of loneliness and doubts about immortality? Princess Angelique sighed and said, But no matter what, you and I both enjoy all of this, don't we? On the basis of sucking everything from the gods? Captain J shook his head. Of course, I don't mean to deny all of this. Just like what you said, you and I both enjoy all of this incomparable convenience, superior birth, and can even stand without hesitation at the point where we can persuade others to be kind without going through human affairs. It's just that the world is balanced after all. There's no need to pay for anything. Standing at the top of the food chain is like plundering and endless plunder. Elder sister, don't you think that the scale of the world will be slightly tilted? The remnants of the mythological era will be sealed in the Nirvana ocean forever. The royal family has the power to suppress the world, and the demi-humans will never rise again. What happened to the gods in the mythological era won't happen to humans, us, the princess said with certainty. I think, Captain J said softly, the gods in the past also thought so confidently. Are you done messing around? Her Highness suddenly became emotional. When can you get rid of this senseless melancholy? You are the first successor, and this belongs to you. Fate can't be changed. I will kill all the people who want to distort fate. What happened to the gods? I will never let it happen to you. All right. Captain J smiled. Now you're back to how I remember you, sister. He took out a mirror and placed it in front of Princess Angelique. In the mirror, her hairstyle had changed. It was no longer the noble and cold hairstyle. It was the style of a young girl with a big bow tied around her head. Her eyes moved slightly. Captain J whispered in her ear, When I saw you for the first time, you looked like this. I'm not. The princess lowered her head. By the way, Captain J patted Princess Angelique's shoulders and said in a brisk voice, I've prepared a set of clothes for you for tomorrow's performance. Captain J reached out his hands, and a thin black set of clothes fell to the ground. Princess Angelique was stunned. Her small mouth opened slightly, and then she became furious. You know when to stop. Without a doubt, this was a set of clothes for a bunny girl. She was the first princess of the empire. How could she wear it? I won't wear it even if I die. Then, I'll go through the trouble of putting it on for you. You! How dare you? How do you undo the buttons on this set of clothes? The skills of the royal tailors are getting better and better. I found a way. Wait a minute. Princess Angelique said in a panic. I'll do it myself. Captain J smiled and said, Sure enough, sister, you are the most considerate. Then, Captain J leaped out and left the inverted house, leaving Princess Angelique staring at the bunny girl set of clothes on the ground in a daze. She found that she was no longer confined to the chair. Princess Angelique sighed slowly and picked up the clothes on the ground silently. As the saying goes, a cloud-piercing arrow can summon brothers. Well, the Holy Land didn't seem to have such a thing as a cloud-piercing arrow. However, the leader of the drowning dog pirates had other means. He could gather all the forces of the low-level subhumans hidden in the Holy Land in a short time. It took the whole second half of the night. After 4 o'clock in the morning, the leaders of the low-level forces from all over the Holy Land gathered in a sewer camp to discuss something. It was probably about how to reach the human monument. Daphne passed by while fetching water and overheard some of the discussions. This girl was left behind to take care of the Witch of Turbidity, who had fainted due to the side effects of foresight. In addition, there was also the little girl Mingtian, who had exhausted all her strength to block the Sword King's sword strike. It seemed that Daphne could only do these things for now. The Demoness of Turbidity on the wooden bed suddenly flipped over, and this immediately woke Daphne up from her daze. "You're awake? Ms. Ing. This is what?" The Witch of Turbidity rubbed her head and got up with a painful mask on her face. "You fainted. This is the place arranged by leader Yi Yen." Daphne quickly explained what happened. Monument. The Witch of Turbidity was a little absent-minded. "I dreamed. No wonder my head hurts so much. Did I say anything else?" Daphne said in surprise. "Ms. Ing, you don't remember?" The Witch of Turbidity shook her head and said, "I will forget most of the things I saw in the dream. This way, it will be a little fairer." "Fairer?" The Witching said indifferently. "If I'm the only one who can be omniscient about the future, it's very unfair." Daphne froze for a moment and then shook her head. "Although I don't quite understand, I guess." "Ms. Ing, you have something to worry about too?" "All kinds of things." The Witch of Turbidity shook her head and glanced at Daphne casually. "Just like you. Don't you have something to worry about too?" Daphne opened her mouth and then smiled bitterly. "I'm just a very insignificant person. Even if I have something to worry about, it's probably something trivial. Now, everyone is working hard for tomorrow's matter, but basically," the Witch of Turbidity said indifferently, "the people in this world, be it the demi-humans or the descendants of mythical creatures, most of them worry about trivial things every day. After all, the people who make the tides of fate are only a very small part of them. For most people, the intense change of power is probably just a good night's sleep and a good dream. After waking up, life is still the same as before. It doesn't matter who the ruler is, unless you want to participate in it yourself." Daphne couldn't help but fall into deeper confusion. The Demoness of Turbidity lay down again. She lay flat on her back, the kind that did not do anything, but her eyes were wide open as she stared at the ceiling with a hopeless look on her face. "Ms. Ing, what are you doing? It's easier to recover this way," the Demoness of Turbidity said expressionlessly. "Every time I finish a dream, all kinds of bad things will happen to me. At this time, the best thing to do is to do nothing and try to reduce the probability of triggering misfortune." Daphne couldn't help but ask, Is it useful?" "Basically, no," the Witch of Turbidity said indifferently, "except for psychological comfort, but it can still recover physical strength." "Ms. Ing, are you familiar with Leader?" Daphne suddenly asked. The Witch of Turbidity just rolled her eyes and glanced at Daphne casually. It was the kind of gaze that looked like a dead fish's eyes. "No." "I see." Daphne, who felt that the conversation had ended, couldn't help but feel a little awkward. The Witch of Turbidity said, "You seem to care a lot about that dead man." "Well, that guy." Daphne relaxed a little and sat on the side hugging her knees. She said slowly, "Leader, he took me in when I was at my most helpless and had no place to stay, so don't mind him." The Witch of Turbidity said indifferently, "He might not have taken you in out of kindness. It might just be a spur of the moment. Maybe, in his eyes, you are no different from a stray cat by the roadside." Daphne said blankly, "What kind of person is Leader?" "He's just a bastard who doesn't tell the truth and doesn't take responsibility to put out the fire," the Witch of Turbidity said harshly. She actually couldn't bear to really scold him. Daphne couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. She couldn't help but feel a thick, almost tangible resentment emanating from this Miss Ing. She probably needed to divert this resentful atmosphere or something. Daphne braced herself and said, "Ms. Ing, do you believe in the existence of magic?" "Why do you ask?" As expected, the demoness of turbidity stopped the resentment that was spreading out like bad luck and looked stunned. Daphne shook her head and said, "It's nothing. It's just that when I chatted with Leader in the past we talked about this topic. The magic of resurrection from the dead, something like magic. If there is any power that can resurrect the dead, then it is indeed magic." The Witch of Turbidity said indifferently, "He's not wrong. It's very magical. You guys, foreseeing dreams, splitting the earth with a sword, and emitting red steam all the time. It's also very magical, okay?" The atmosphere suddenly became quiet again. Daphne seemed to be sleepy. Her eyelids were getting heavy, and her thoughts were gradually becoming rigid in the chaos. Suddenly, the Witch of Turbidity sat up and exclaimed, "Oh no! What's wrong?" Daphne was shocked. The Witch of Turbidity touched her stomach and said, "I'm hungry. Foreseeing dreams used up too much energy. My stomach hurts." Daphne opened her mouth and said, I'll get you something to eat?" "Okay." She nodded seriously. "Please." She didn't seem difficult to get along with? Chapter 2233. Miss Ing, the food might be too simple. After all, Miss Ing? In the simple room, only the little girl was still unconscious. However, the Witch of Turbidity was nowhere to be seen. Daphne was silent for a moment. Then, she walked into the room and sat down. She was in a daze. She didn't seem to want to look for her. Daphne didn't react until the curtains were lifted and the demoness of turbidity walked in with a sullen look on her face. "Miss Ing, you. Don't immortals need to go to the bathroom?" I didn't mean that." The Witch of Turbidity walked in with an unhappy expression. She picked up a plate and sat by the bed to eat. "If it's not enough, I'll give you more. Why didn't you look for me?" The Witch of Turbidity's words suddenly interrupted Daphne's attempt to break the silence. Hearing that, Daphne subconsciously said, "Perhaps I thought that if I waited a little longer, Miss Ing would come back or something like that. Because I couldn't tell where you went. Look, didn't you come back already? Why didn't you tell me your initial judgment?" The Witch of Turbidity said indifferently, "You just waited passively, okay? Or rather, you never took the initiative, okay?" Daphne couldn't help but lower her head. "I'm sorry." The Witch of Turbidity rolled her eyes. She suddenly put down the food and wiped her lip. "I'm going to leave this room now. Do you want to stop me?" The Witch of Turbidity didn't say anything else. She walked straight out. Daphne looked at her figure. She opened her mouth and clenched her fist. However, she didn't do anything until the Witch of Turbidity had completely left her sight. Young girl, on the other hand, heaved a sigh of relief and relaxed. She leaned against the wall and looked at the empty room. Suddenly, the Witch of Turbidity returned to the room with an unhappy expression. Daphne even felt that it was unreal. "Can't immortals have stomachaches?" The Witch of Turbidity gave a very reasonable answer again. Then, she walked into the room with an unhappy expression. She sat down and rolled her dead fish eyes unhappily. Daphne was silent for a moment. Then, she said, I'll go out first and see if there's anything I can help with." The moment he lifted the curtain, the voice of the demoness of turbidity came from behind him. "You will return to where you came from if you don't do anything but wait passively." Daphne subconsciously turned around and said in a trembling voice, "Miss Ing, did you see something?" The Witch of Turbidity shrugged and said, "I can't see it clearly. It's very blurry. It's about you, but it's very unreal. I only know that it's a place called Freedom City. Speaking of which, is there such a place outside the Holy Land?" Daphne, on the other hand, retreated in horror and subconsciously said, Is it about Chief Yi Yan's operation this time?" "I don't know. The muddy witch shook her head. Everyone interprets dreams differently. What I can see is only one side of it, and it's a blurry side. However, in theory, it does have something to do with this matter. After all, the matter about you was triggered because of this. What should I do? Daphne asked subconsciously. Don't do anything. The witch chuckled. Anyway, aren't you used to doing nothing and waiting passively? No. It's not like that. The Witch of Turbidity suddenly stared at Daphne and said in a low voice, "What a disgusting person. Dressing like this. Do you like your current appearance very much?" The girl in the room instantly felt her limbs turn cold. With horror, she quickly retreated. She even tore open the curtain and rushed out. The Witch of Turbidity didn't chase after her, but her figure changed. Gradually, the witch disappeared and was replaced by a black-haired young man. The room was quiet. The black-haired young man came to the little girl Tomorrow's side. "I haven't seen you yet, but in the future, perhaps there will be a day when we meet again." He tapped Tomorrow's forehead lightly, and his figure gradually faded from the room. Not long after, the little girl moved. She slowly got up with a perplexed expression on her face. However, with her eyesight, she couldn't see anything clearly. It was just a feeling. Who came? In the alley, a woman whose clothes were somewhat tattered was hobbling with a stick tied to her. The Witch of Turbidity, Miss Ing. The unlucky people were the type who would fall even if they were flat-footed. On the way out, the Witch of Turbidity had inexplicably fallen 5 times in just a few hundred meters. Her toes knocked into the corner of the wall 3 times, she knelt down twice, and fell into the trash 3 times. Even the bread he took out accidentally fell into the smelly gutter. The witch was very strong. She always wore a painful mask. "Damn bastard! Scum! Trash! You made me have that kind of dream! You made me so unlucky! Just you wait!" She walked out of the alley and roared at the human monument. "Who is it?" A group of purge knights hurried over and quickly surrounded a certain sorceress who was in a sorry state. She bit her tongue. "Suspicious person. Capture her first." Wait! Capture her!" The witch was instantly caught by the purge knights and dragged away. "I've had enough." Star Creation's method was that as long as one could get close to the target of star creation, they could set up the spell. However, the bigger the object, the longer it would take, and the more energy it would consume. For example, the god-destroying weapon Leviathan was a terrifying object that was as big as an island. Stepping on Leviathan wasn't difficult. For Senior Sister Madanzo and Yulia, who weren't affected by godless domain, it was quite easy. After all, it was so big that the knights stationed here couldn't patrol in all directions. Babalia didn't move with them. He was arranged to lead the Fantasy Circus group to meet up with the Drowning Dog Bandit. "How is it?" In the corner of the Leviathan's surface, Madanzo quickly asked. Senior Sister Yulia was lying on the ground like a dry person. On the ground, there was a strange ring that was unfolding. A large number of formula-like symbols were jumping in the ring. "No. This thing is too big. My spell can't cover it for the time being. It can't even cover 1/10 of it." Senior Sister Yulia raised her head weakly. "My soul power has been damaged several times. Not long ago, the Sword King General chopped off one of my arms, which reduced the density of my black soul body. It has some effect." Madanzo pondered and said, "It's rumored that more than 10,000 people are needed to control this god-destroying weapon. If Leviathan is compared to a ship, the crew needs to perform their duties to control it. But no matter what, the direction of the ship is controlled by the rudder." Senior Yulia was stunned. "You mean, the control room? What if Xing Chuang doesn't control the whole body, but the core of the Leviathan itself?" Senior Sister Yulia instantly stood up with full blood. "It's possible in theory. I'll go and find it. With that, Yulia's body sank directly into the outer deck of Leviathan and disappeared in the blink of an eye. It wasn't the first time Madanzo saw this. It's really convenient. The so-called black soul body. He muttered something, then loosened his neck, stretched his body, and slowly turned around. Then, I have to do something. In front of him, a figure was casually sitting on the railing at a high place and looking down. The Empire's King General Fushi. He looked at the little boy below, and he also looked up at the Empire's King General. When their gazes met, a series of dense explosive sounds suddenly appeared in the air. The King of Heaven, General Fushi, was the first to speak with a strange expression. Speaking of which, it's really strange. This should be the first time we've met, but for some reason, I keep having the urge to beat you up. Could it be that you're one of those annoying types? What a coincidence. I have the same feeling. Madanzo also had a look of realization. Let's fight? Let's fight! If I punch you, you might die? If I punch you with my sword, you might die. Confrontation. The explosive sounds in the air instantly sounded like thunder. Then, 2 streaks of light shot up into the sky like shooting stars. At dawn, they directly disappeared into the clouds high in the sky. The Purge Knights didn't have time to investigate at all, but the alarm of a Leviathan being invaded sounded at this moment. Every time they clashed, a sea of clouds that was hundreds of meters or even thousands of meters away would churn. Above the clouds of dawn, in the sea of clouds dyed red by the rising sun, the 6-winged youth held a luminous sword in each hand. King General Fushi stood with his hands behind his back, but there was a strange cross-shaped weapon rotating slowly under his feet. 6-winged. Looks like the light race's outfit, but there shouldn't be any light race with such strength outside. King General Fushi said thoughtfully, "Did you sneak out from the Nirvana Ocean?" Madanzo narrowed her eyes and said, "I escaped from the place you fear." King General Fushi chuckled. "Very cunning. If this matter isn't handled properly, my salary will be deducted for several decades. I wonder if I can recover some of my losses by capturing you." Madanzo said indifferently, "I also want to test the upper limit of this place. The 7 royal generals of the Empire. I can probably see a trace of the terror of the founding emperor." King General Fushi shook his head at this moment. "I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. His Majesty. No, a glorious son is not in the same dimension as us." Madanzo was probably the type who would never lose a battle with words. Hearing this, she chuckled. "It's all right. I've met many people in different dimensions, so there's always a standard of tolerance." "Seems like you're really powerful." King General Fushi nodded. "All right then, I'll go first. If I can't win, I'll let Jun take advantage of the situation. There will be a time when you'll be tired." Madanzo was shocked. "Shame? What shame is there to beat up a worker?" King General Fushi laughed. "Salary is the most important thing." The crimson sea of clouds churned violently again. It seemed like neither of them could do anything to the other, in a short period of time. Lord Jun. 2 powerful waves were detected in the sky. One of them seems to be Lord Fushi. The other, don't worry about him. King General Fushi said indifferently at this time. Your most important task now is to use the power to break the death declaration of Leviathan. Before noon you must succeed. All the researchers in the Holy Land, and even the research apprentices have been dispatched. We will do our best. They were just doing their best. King General Fushi sighed softly. He knew that high pressure was useless. These researchers who were breaking the death declaration were even more aware of the seriousness of the situation. I'll go deep into the core of Leviathan, King General Fushi said coldly. Lord Jun, you can't be thinking of. If you can't break the death declaration before the deadline, this is the only way to stop a Leviathan. After saying that, King General Fushi left directly. He was going to guard Leviathan's core and destroy it before it was too late. No matter how terrifying the death declaration was, without the core output power, it naturally couldn't be realized. Even if it would take a long time to repair the core in the future, or it would never be able to be completely repaired, causing Leviathan to drop a level. Sure enough, only Lord D. June has this courage, in the dimension, in the chaos of the void. Like the moment a star was destroyed, a terrifying light was instantly produced. The moment the light flickered, in the chaos of the void, countless primordial void demons were annihilated and disappeared in an instant. Everything gradually calmed down. Then, 3 figures of 5 to 6 meters tall slowly appeared. They weren't people, but huge mechas. At this time, a voice came from one of the mechas. Renina, the positioning error this time is too big. This is obviously not the coordinates of the kingdom of heaven. A response came from another mecha. Something is interfering with Alpha's system. At this time, a voice also slowly sounded from the third mecha. Meshi, use Kurlet's ability to eliminate the unknown interference. Renina, use Alpha, again to locate the location. The signal given by Balaam should be correct. Okay, they work together. Not long after, Meshi's voice came from the mecha named Kurlet again. It's done, there's a reaction, although it's not strong. Positioning complete. Renina's voice came at the same time. In the third mecha, a palm slowly placed on the control ball in the cockpit. Then go through, Kauros. The third mecha was named Kauros. It turned into a beam of light and flew into a gigantic ring of light. Then, Alpha and Kale followed suit. In the depths of the void of the dimension, silence was restored again. Chapter 2234. Wisps of mist slowly seeped out of the crack. It was the body of a black soul. It had all kinds of fancy penetrating abilities, and this special body could be said to have the maximum infiltration ability. Inside the god-destroying weapon Leviathan, the Purge Knights were frantically searching for traces of the intruder, but they didn't know that the intruder was moving above their heads. This continued until Senior Sister, Yulia, found an impenetrable wall. There was only a door, an ancient metal door, but obviously the metal wasn't bronze. The wall seemed to contain a strange power that could prevent the body of a black soul from penetrating. Senior Sister, Yulia, had no choice but to stand in front of the metal door. Her intuition told her that if the thing behind the door wasn't valuable, then it must be terrifying. Moreover, in the center of the door, there was a groove that looked very familiar to her. What's this? She floated to the front of the groove and stared at it for a long time. A strange feeling arose in her heart. What a coincidence! The groove was almost identical to the shape of the music box that she stole from the secret compartment in the Crown Prince's study. When she left the royal castle garden, Emperor Califar threw the music box back to her, saying that she might be able to use it. Could it be that this is the time? Senior Sister, Yulia, couldn't help but swallow. She felt that not only was she being controlled by Boss Luo, but she also seemed to have unknowingly fallen into some kind of trap set by the Emperor Califar. She felt as if she was being toyed with by fate. It can't be so coincidental. Senior Sister, Yulia, took a deep breath. She was a person who didn't believe that many coincidences could happen one after another. Therefore, all of this was probably premeditated. Just as she was about to vomit the music box out of her body and press it into the groove, an extremely strong feeling of death instantly spread throughout her body. Almost suffocating, Senior Sister, Yulia, didn't even think before her body instantly split into 2 clouds of mist. A beam of sword light slashed down, the moment she split herself into 2. White clothes, white sword. The King of Swords, D. June. The Witch of the World Academy instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. This guy could really kill her. The fact that she had lost an arm's worth of black soul body was the best proof of that. However, the King of Swords clearly did not intend to give her any more time to escape. After his first strike struck empty air, the second strike was already following closely behind. Furthermore, it was at a terrifying speed of over 100 strikes in an instant. The sword light blotted out the sky and covered the earth like a fantasy film. Senior sister, Yulia, instantly felt the thick malice from the page whirled. Wait. I'm the crown prince consort. The senior marshal sister instinctively cried out in alarm. You can't cut me. Hundreds of sword lights, like the breath of the Grim Reaper, locked down all the space she could move in. Just as she was about to be annihilated, the sword lights suddenly stopped and then disappeared one by one. In the end, only the white sword in Jun's hand remained. Say that again? Stand by. I said stand by. Senior sister, Yulia, instantly shivered and quickly added a setting for herself. Originally, she wanted to boldly say that she was the imperial concubine. However, considering that the founding emperor seemed to have a special relationship with her boss, since she was going to die anyway, she might as well choose a name that could still be saved. Ridiculous. The King of Swords snorted coldly. Ridiculous. It's true. Senior sister, Yulia, immediately said in a stern voice, otherwise, why did His Majesty want to see me in the forest? Are you stupid? Because I'm the crown prince consort candidate, which means I'm the future daughter-in-law. His Majesty doesn't necessarily want to see you because of this, Jun said indifferently, but you broke in here because… What's that in your hand? The King of Swords suddenly frowned and stared at the thing in senior sister, Yulia's hand. His Majesty gave it to me. Senior sister, Yulia said in a relaxed tone. He said it was the first time we met, so he didn't have time to prepare it, so he gave it to me as a gift. Impossible, Jun said coldly. Senior sister, Yulia said, if His Majesty didn't give it to me, how could I take such an important thing away under His Majesty's nose? The King of Swords was silent. There was a chance. Senior sister, Yulia, was secretly delighted. She directly raised the music box in her hand and walked a few steps towards Jun. What? Don't you know how much His Majesty values this thing? The King of Swords continued to be silent, but he slowly sheathed the white sword. This matter is suspicious, so I won't kill you for the time being. But you can't leave my sight. I'll report this matter to His Majesty later. If it's true, Jun will ask for your forgiveness. Now I'm sorry. After that, an iron chain suddenly shot out from Jun's sleeve. The chain instantly wrapped around senior sister, Yulia's arm. With the special characteristics of the black soul body, she couldn't break free. Senior sister, Yulia, looked at the length of the chain and couldn't help but pout. What if I want to go to the bathroom? I'll turn around, Jun said indifferently. You dare to King bully the crown prince's woman? Don't you know that men are all fragile? In the future, don't blame me for being a demon concubine and hurting your relationship, okay? Jun snorted coldly, shook his arm, and the chain suddenly became more than 10 times longer. Now it's done. You win. Senior sister, Yulia, couldn't help but sigh. It was a pity that the surroundings were empty, and there was only the cold floor and walls. There was nothing to mess with at all. Otherwise, it would have been good if it could have distracted this late-stage OCD patient. She didn't know how Senior Sister 11 was doing. Senior Sister, Yulia, gritted her teeth, jumped up again, and approached the groove of the door. What are you doing? The King of Sword instantly shouted coldly. As long as I don't leave your sight, it's fine, isn't it? Senior Sister didn't look back. You didn't say that I can't do anything. You didn't say that I can't do anything now. I'm a woman, and I'm such a rascal. Come and bite me if you dare. The King of Swords frowned. Under normal circumstances, His Majesty would not allow anyone to take away the music box right under his nose. As long as His Majesty didn't agree, no one could do it. She could only be given to her. At this time, under Jun's suspicious gaze, Senior Sister, Yulia, gritted her teeth and directly pressed the music box into the groove. Then, she floated back a few meters. She waited quietly. Along with the appearance of a light pattern, a huge omega symbol floated on the surface of the door with the groove as the center. Then, the symbol split into two, which meant that the door was opening. Senior sister Yulia glanced back and saw that the King of Swords' expression had become more serious. She knew that the thing inside was no small matter. But at this time, she was already helpless. She could only hope that the thing inside could give her a chance to turn things around. After the door opened enough for one person to pass through, senior sister Yulia quickly took out the music box and directly swallowed it into her stomach. The chain was long enough, so she took the lead and walked in. Then, she saw a heart. It was the biggest, beating heart she had ever seen. Every time the huge heart beat, it felt like it could burst her head. The sound of her heartbeat even directly shook her divine soul. The body of the black soul had actually automatically entered a free state. What's this? Senior sister Yulia was absent-minded for a few seconds. Leviathan's heart. You dare to open this door, but don't you know it? The King of Swords' voice slowly came from behind her. Senior sister Yulia couldn't help but exclaim, You mean, Leviathan is a living thing? The King of Sword didn't give her any verbal answer, but his eyes gave her the answer. Senior sister Yulia was instantly discouraged. Because of the horrifying heartbeat, she felt weak all over and fell to the ground. The star creation technique couldn't work on living things. Senior 11, you opened a small door this time. You seem disappointed. Dijun walked to senior sister Yulia and looked down at her. Senior sister Yulia said with a complicated expression, Well, if I really become the crown princess, will I have a bright future? Dijun didn't say a word. He directly sat on the ground with his legs crossed and stabbed his white sword into the ground, looking like he was going to guard this place. Senior sister Yulia shrugged and played with her fingers. She still remembered the music box, so she vomited the music box out and opened it. As the music box sounded, the beating of Leviathan's huge heart seemed to have changed a little. It seemed to be much softer and less uncomfortable. Hey, do you know who this woman is? Senior sister Yulia opened the music box and asked Dijun, Your Highness Yao. She didn't expect that Dijun would answer her, so she couldn't help but feel surprised. Your Highness Yao? Dijun said expressionlessly, She's the crown prince's birth mother. Senior sister Yulia was stunned. She rubbed her eyebrows and said, Speaking of which, I haven't figured out the relationship between the several heirs of the royal family. You know, ordinary girls like me who are suddenly favored by the overbearing emperor usually don't know the inside story of the royal family. Dijun still looked at her expressionlessly. Senior sister Yulia felt uneasy. Then he said slowly, His Majesty has 2 concubines. One is Princess Yao, the crown prince's birth mother. The other is Princess Zhongxia, who gave birth to Princess Angelique and His Highness, Desolate. No. Senior sister Yulia frowned. Why did I hear differently? That be asterisk, TC. Well, Prince Desolate is the illegitimate son of His Majesty, so it hasn't been officially announced. So, what's the matter with Angelique? Dijun thought for a while and said, Princess Angelique turned to Her Highness Yao after she was born, so she has an official identity. As for Prince Desolate, it's because of some special reasons. What's the reason? You're asking too many questions. Dijun said indifferently, If you're really the crown princess's candidate, you may have a chance to know it in the future. You've said half of it, okay? Why didn't your OCD act up now? There should be another one? Senior sister Yulia thought for a while and said, There's a princess who has never shown up. There should be 4 heirs in total. Don't worry. If there's no special situation, you won't see her. Dijun said indifferently. What kind of special situation? Senior sister asked curiously. Dijun said, For example, when you're about to die. Senior sister Yulia couldn't help being shocked and blurted out, "You mean she's dead?" "In a sense, it's true. Dead. Dead. Already dead?" The sister of Commander J, the heroine of the page world, who had never shown up, was dead? How could this be? How could this be? This is not right. This is not right. Senior sister, Yulia, couldn't help but feel numb in her scalp. She didn't have any ideas in her mind and only felt confused. How could she be dead? She already knew that Book of Gaia was the evolution of her diary. But if she was dead, then who wrote the diary? Or in other words, this page of the page world in the Holy Land? Who was writing this page? At this moment, a violent impact instantly spread over a Leviathan. The shockwave was extremely violent. This huge god-exterminating weapon, that was as big as an island, was forced to sink several meters, as if it was hit by some kind of impact. After the King of Swords charged forward, he couldn't help but frown as he dodged. Senior sister, Yulia, guessed that if she didn't rush forward, she would probably be kite like a kite. On a deck on the surface of Leviathan, dozens of purge knights who arrived first were now surrounding a deep pit. This deep pit was just smashed out. A beam of light fell from the sky like a meteor, forcing Leviathan to sink several meters. The inside of Leviathan was turbulent. In the big pit, white steam was billowing out. The terrifyingly high temperature made the metal deck at the edge of Leviathan turn red. Sir D. June! An exclamation sounded. At this moment, the King of Sword flew over with an iron chain dragging a woman behind him. D. June landed on the edge of the deep pit and looked over. Sir D. June, just now, when that knight was about to report, D. June waved his hand and signaled for him to be quiet. The King of Swords stared at the white steam in the pit and said coldly, "He's out." The knights shivered and pulled out their weapons, pointing at the deep pit nervously. A confused figure slowly appeared in the white steam. The figure gradually became clear. So many people are welcoming me. This is Sir Fushi's voice. Seeing that the person who slowly walked out of the white steam was Lord Fushi, the King of Heaven. Only then did the group of knights let out a sigh of relief. However, at this moment, senior sister Yulia sucked in a cold breath. Not only did the King of Heaven come out, but he also dragged another guy out. Madanzo. At this moment, he was being held by the back of his collar and was being dragged out by Fushi bit by bit like a dead dog. His eyes were rolled back and he seemed to have already lost consciousness. I haven't done such vigorous exercise for a long time, King of Fushi said with a smile. Chapter 2235. The Crown Princess Candidate? The key to Leviathan's heart was given by His Majesty? The heavenly monarch was currently sizing up Senior Yulia, and he had a very surprised expression on his face. At this moment, Senior Yulia instantly put on an obedient mask. What could she do? She was also in despair. Senior 11 with the cowhide brush, Palace, was rolling his eyes and foaming at the mouth. Suspected. Emperor June gave such an answer. The heavenly monarch turned his gaze and greeted him with a smile. That's not too far off. Emperor June, you are in the wrong. How can you treat the crown princess candidate like this? Emperor June said indifferently, come here. I'll deal with this person who is suspected to be from the Light Clan first. The King of Heaven mentioned Madanzo again, without saying a word. Senior Yulia seemed to know nothing about the fact that she and Madanzo had illegally logged in together. The King of Heaven left just like that. Monument! Senior Yulia suddenly shouted at this moment. The two King of Heaven's gazes shot over as if they were real. Your crown prince might be at the monument right now, senior sister, Yulia said with a serious expression. That place might also be the place where the execution will take place. They didn't ask more. After exchanging a look, the King of Heaven said indifferently, Emperor June, we have work to do. An unprecedented riot broke out in the Holy Land. The residents of the Holy Land who bore the death mark wanted to escape. They thought that they would have to sacrifice a lot to get through the checkpoints guarded by the knight. However, it wasn't so. There weren't many knights guarding the checkpoints, and there were only a few ordinary guards. The death mark had marked the dead people. Once the time was up, it meant the arrival of death. This was the terrifying ability of the god-destroying weapon, Leviathan. Therefore, there was no need to guard the checkpoints, let alone capture them. In fact, the people couldn't go anywhere. After realizing this, the Purge Knights retreated and allowed the chaos to fester and the trampling of those who blocked the exits of the city to happen. I'm a conferred aristocrat. Bastard, I can give you a lot of wealth. Break open a path for me to get out. This noble was operating normally. At the very least, he planned to spend money to hire someone. However, most of them were ordering their servants to chase them away violently. The Purging Knights no longer cared about them anyway. This is a human. Mythical creatures were defeated by such humans. In an open space on the city wall, the half-elf girl Kaliana stuck her head out and looked at the chaos below, feeling emotional. The one who knocked us down was only the glorious sun, not a human. Kaliana subconsciously turned her head and looked at the legendary shadow hero, Kai, who had brought her here. Right now, a Kai Emperor seemed to be in a good state of mind. The metal dragon bone that had been bothering him had also been removed. Just like a ferocious beast. Just by standing there calmly, he gave off the feeling of a ferocious beast. Kaliana subconsciously shuddered. She didn't know why this legendary hero only took her away. Was it because they were both elves? However, she only had half-elf blood. Strictly speaking, a mixed blood with a human would not please either side except for her closest relative. Glorious sun. What kind of existence is it? Kaliana subconsciously looked at the floating castle. A special existence that only appears in a certain era. Kai Emperor was very calm. Glorious sun is not a human, but the power of fate. Fate. Kaliana couldn't help but open her mouth. Or rather, the power to control fate, Kai Emperor said calmly. Whether fate itself can be controlled is itself a mystery. Generally speaking, the only thing that can control fate is fate itself. But who knows if fate is actually not controlled by a higher level of fate? No Matryoshka dolls. Kaliana immediately rolled her eyes. Kai Emperor was also quite direct. He directly knocked Kaliana to the ground with one blow. In short, you just need to remember that fighting against Califar is no different from fighting against fate. At this time, Kaliana couldn't help but rub her swollen head. The reason why this legendary hero insisted on taking her away was that she was the inheritor of will. She didn't know what will was actually, and Akai didn't explain. Then, he simply and violently brought her to his side. But I heard that the crown prince of the empire seems to be glorious sun, too. Kaliana rubbed her head as she got up. You have to fight against more than just the founder great emperor? Kai was silent at this time. Just when Kaliana thought Kai wouldn't answer, this great hero slowly said, in the same era, it is impossible for two glorious sun to exist at the same time. What do you mean? The new glorious sun will continue to devour the power of the old one until the old one dies. And this process is irreversible. Kaliana's heart trembled, and she subconsciously said, what if the old one is unwilling? At this time, Akai Emperor said expressionlessly, I said that the process is irreversible, but I didn't say that it won't stop. When there is only one glorious sun left, it will naturally stop. Kaliana, who seemed to have realized something, couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression. Between the founder great emperor and the crown prince of the empire, in the end, there could only be one existence. This is a very good opportunity. At this time, a strong violent aura suddenly erupted from Akai Emperor's body. Compared to the more powerful old one, the new, glorious sun is obviously weaker. As long as we kill the new, glorious sun, then the power of destiny that the glorious sun represents will be greatly lost. Califar will not be undefeatable. Kai began to press his legs. The car slowly stopped at the parking lot of an unfinished building. Babalia walked down from the carriage and looked left and right. Immediately, a few demi-humans with unkind expressions walked out from the shadows all around the carriage. They quickly surrounded Babalia. However, this former runner-up of the Holy Land swordsmanship competition didn't show any signs of retreating. Soon, the demi-humans opened up a path, and Yi Yen, the leader of the drowning dog bandits, walked out. Only one came back? Yi Yen frowned. Babalia said, "Young master asked me to bring you some gifts." As he spoke, Babalia lifted the cloth cover on the container in the car. Inside, there were members of the fantasy circus, lying on the ground. "These are friends of the Crown Prince," Babalia said indifferently. "Young master said that you will know what to do." Yi Yen shrugged. "I know what I will do, but I don't know if it is what your young master wants to do. But it doesn't matter, I don't have to listen to him." "As you wish," Babalia said indifferently. "I have completed the mission. Then goodbye." He was about to leave, but the demi-humans didn't seem to want to let him go just like that. They approached him. Babalia glanced at them casually, but Yi Yen waved his hand at this time. "Let him go. After all, no matter what, you won't feel at ease if there is a noble deacon in the team. I have received the gift. Please tell your young master that I like this gift very much." Babalia bowed and disappeared from the parking lot. "Okay, go and prepare," Yi Yen said loudly. "This is originally an internal matter of the royal family, and it has nothing to do with us. However, the Divine Destroyer has been activated, and all of us have been marked as dead. Naturally, we can't just sit still and wait for death. We can't entrust our hope of survival to others. Even if we are just creatures living in the sewers, we must pollute the world with the filth of the sewers. Whoever wants us to die, we will kill them. Look, it's that simple, right?" High-pitched. In an empty house that was tilted, Captain J was lying on a recliner, staring at the white ceiling in a daze. His fingers, there was a coin flipping between his fingers. As a qualified magician, he was naturally very skilled in playing with coins. At this time, the little blue bird flew in from the chaotic space outside the empty house and landed directly on Leader J's body. "Are you full?" "Not bad." Leader J smiled slightly. "Then it's time to work." "It's almost time, go." Soon, the little blue bird flew out of the empty house again. This time, it flew directly out of the human monument. No one cared about the little bird flying in the sky. Everyone was busy with their own business. The coin was still turning on Leader J's fingertips. Suddenly it stopped. In front of Leader J, a small light screen unfolded. It was the outside of the human monument, and a figure appeared. The leader blinked thoughtfully. Soon, at the base of the human monument, a crack that was as tall as two people cracked open. It was the entrance. "Is it asking me to go in?" Daphne looked at the entrance that suddenly appeared in front of her in shock. It was dark inside, and she couldn't see anything at all. "Should I go in?" She gritted her teeth and went in. Daphne was shocked by the upside-down emptiness inside the human monument. But soon, something brought Daphne's body to a higher place. In just a moment, Daphne came to a tilted, empty room. Leader J was here now, sitting on a recliner. Leader. How did you know I was here?" Leader J asked directly. Daphne hesitated and said, It's Miss Ying's precognitive dream. She had a precognitive dream not long after you left." "I see." Leader J nodded and then said with a bitter smile, "Since she had a precognitive dream, that guy will probably hate me to death. Then, why did you come to me?" "I don't know." Daphne shook her head. "I walked and walked. She said something to you, right?" Leader J's eyes were abnormally clear. Daphne was slightly startled. "Leader, he didn't seem to have changed. He still had the same look in his eyes, the same look he had when he was performing with everyone in the circus. Such a leader, really, really wants the Holy Land to be bathed in rivers of blood? Missing, she really. Daphne opened her mouth. He suddenly wanted to confess something in front of Jay. The urge to break out of the ground like a bud was crazily trying to pry open his teeth. If it's difficult, it's fine if you don't say it. Leader Jay shook his head. It's fair. After all, I have many things that I haven't told you, so I won't force you. Leader, why do you want to do these things? Daphne mustered up her courage and asked. Leader Jay chuckled and said, if I don't do these things now, I might regret it in the future. The death mark on Daphne's head was still as red as blood. He gritted his teeth and said, I heard that everyone has been marked. Mr. Chintiano and the others too. I know. Leader Jay nodded. Daphne said, Leader, you can remove the death mark on Chintian and the others, so you're not worried, right? I don't intend to remove their marks. Leader Jay shook his head at this time. Including you, I don't intend to remove it. So, you came to me just for this, right? Daphne smiled bitterly. I have such thoughts before. Now, I still have such thoughts, Daphne said softly, but it doesn't seem to be that strong. I always feel that if people die, there are many things that they don't have to worry about and don't have to face. Escaping is very shameful, right? No, escaping is the most useful way. Leader Jay shook his head and said, when facing pain, there is no more useful way than escaping. I personally recommend people to escape. After all, escaping means that people don't have the ability to overcome pain for the time being. Since you don't have this strength yet, why force yourself? If it's just to live, escaping can also make you live well. Leader, you. Daphne was stunned. You also have such a negative view. Then what do you think it is? Leader Jay smiled slightly. Daphne said faintly, when we were in the circus, the leader was always able to bring joy and smiles to everyone. Every audience member who saw your performance would look at you because they could see a long-lost relaxation in you. So I thought that the leader should be able to bring joy to people. Isn't temporary joy a way to escape? Leader Jay said indifferently, according to your understanding, I think the effect I brought to them is more like a drug that temporarily forgets all the depression in life. In fact, I didn't change any of their original situations. It's different, Daphne said excitedly. It's different. After the laughter, everything will become different. Leader Jay changed his sitting position. Then what about you? Have you become different? During this period of time, you have been living in the circus, so you should be unprecedentedly relaxed. But now, it seems that you don't have a good solution to your current situation. You just can't face yourself, right? Leader Jay suddenly stood up. For example, gender. Leader. Daphne retreated in horror. Don't misunderstand. Leader Jay smiled and said, I didn't peek. I just knew when I picked you up. Not only did I know, everyone in the circus knew from the beginning. It's just that no one cared. No one cared? Why should we care? Leader Jay said matter-of-factly, for example, Chintian, such a freak, does anyone care? Like cats, an armor that can laugh, jump, and talk, does anyone care? No. An existence like the circus can accept all kinds of strange things. For the audience, instead of saying whether to accept it or not, it's better to say, that's it? With that said, Leader Jay suddenly snapped his fingers. In an instant, all the clothes on Daphne's body were torn apart. The moment all the disguises were removed, he was stripped naked and stood there naked. So, even if you are a pervert, it doesn't matter. Leader Jay said indifferently. But speaking of which, your hobby is really a bit special. This should be a perverted tattoo? Daphne, the moment Dasher was torn apart, his mind was already blank. When he realized that the tattoo on his lower abdomen that was inscribed by Kalyana with a special technique in the name of stimulating his potential was also seen, Dasher was dumbfounded. No, it's not like this. Chapter 2236. However, the feeling of nakedness was soon replaced by another feeling. A piece of black cloth that was commonly used in magic performances suddenly flashed in front of Dasher's loud voice. The moment the black cloth fell, the clothes on his body had changed. Black shorts, gloves, and boot. The small vest that looked like a strap and the hollow abdomen completely highlighted the coat of arms that Kalyana used to stimulate his potential. It was a pink and purple coat of arms. Accept your true self. The voice of the leader of J sounded in Dasher's ears. The boy looked at the reflection in the mirror that suddenly appeared in front of him with a timid gaze. The real me, yes, the leader of J said softly, the real you. The real me, the leader of J chuckled and casually touched Dasher's cheek with his finger. A purple star-shaped pattern appeared on the boy's cheek, making him look even more demonic. You appeared out of thin air. The leader of J's voice sounded again. I saw it with my own eyes. You suddenly appeared out of thin air without any origin. You, perhaps, don't belong to our world. Dasher's eyes trembled slightly, and he said subconsciously, I don't want to leave here. Then, stay, the captain of J said in a low voice, as my servant. The boy's eyes gradually lost their luster, and he knelt on the ground humbly. He looked at him, unmoved. He just muttered to himself mockingly, I look more and more like a big villain. The scorching sun hung high in the sky. After a night of chaos, the Holy Land seemed unusually bleak during the day. There were only less than 2 hours left before the execution time. There was no one on the road leading to the human monument. There were only some carriages that had lost control and crashed on the roadside. Perhaps they were the carriages used by nobles. The doors and windows of the buildings were tightly closed. From time to time, one could only see shadows swaying behind the curtains. In the few towering buildings closest to the human monument, a group of demi-humans was lurking at this time. There's no movement at all. On the rooftop, the leader of Yen, who was hiding behind a combat cloth, was using a telescope to observe the human monument. However, the human monument was just standing there, and there was no one around. Nothing appeared. Could the witch's prophecy be wrong? The demi-human resistance wasn't just limited to the drowning dog pirate. The entire demi-human resistance was formed because of the Witch of Turbidity's precognitive dream, and they weakly maintained a temporary cooperative relationship. At this moment, news came from the other side. Leviathan. Leviathan moved. It's moving this way. The exclamation instantly made everyone's expression tense. The god-destroying weapon Leviathan, according to the legends, was an ultimate killing weapon that even the gods of the mythological era could easily bring down. The terrifying memories of Leviathan had always been passed down in the bloodline of the descendants of mythical creatures. The fear of it was instinctive, and it was something that happened before they were born. I really don't understand why you have to involve the lives of all of us in the Holy Land. Hasn't it always been like this? To the nobles, to the royal family who enjoy more privileges than the nobles, no matter how they oppress others, commoners are nothing more than dispensable props for their entertainment. Damn it, if we didn't lose the mythological war! Shouts of anger and despair began to spread among the crowd. Yi Yen listened silently, and he didn't have any intention to do anything. Anger and hatred were also good emotions that could be converted into action. Even though he understood one thing. In the mythological war, if the mythical creatures didn't lose, then the one standing in his position now would probably be someone from the human race, right? Let's wait and see what Leviathan will do first. In the huge central control room, the two imperial generals were standing on the left and right respectively. Something interesting was about to happen. Senior Yulia was currently being forced to sit on the chair in the middle by the Fushi Imperial General with a dumbfounded expression. The chair belonged to the Commander-in-Chief. As for the temporary commander-in-chief, Commander Bismarck, he could only stand below with a complicated expression. His authority as the commander-in-chief was bestowed by the King of Heaven, and now his authority had been taken back. Obviously, after a night of hard work, this former commander of the Royal Knights still couldn't wash away the shame of letting the strange bandit, clown, escape from the imperial palace. He looked at the woman sitting between the two generals. This woman should have appeared in the fantasy circus and boarded Count Dekria's airship together with them. He couldn't understand, how did this woman become the crown princess candidate and now sit on the commander-in-chief's seat? Senior Yulia could actually feel the resentment in Commander Bismarck's eyes. The point was that she was also in despair. Her hands were still handcuffed by Emperor June's chains. In fact, Senior Yulia had already figured it out. These two royal generals didn't believe in her so-called identity as the crown prince's consort at all. As for treating her as a substitute for the crown prince's consort. You actually want me to take the blame, right? How can you say that? You are the honorable crown princess candidate, and your status is extremely high. As humble servants of the royal family, how can we dare to be presumptuous in front of the crown princess candidate? The King of Heaven said with a smile, everyone knows that the royal family has a strict hierarchy, and your highness has the highest status here. Of course, Leviathan will be under your command. Could it be that your highness' identity as the crown princess candidate is fake? F***CKU, Senior immediately puffed up her chest. How can it be? Don't you see my good figure? It was all developed by your crown prince. He likes to let me sit on his lap the most, and he even said that my legs are fun. Can't hear it, can't hear it, can't hear it. The people in the control room were so frightened that they couldn't hear anything. Only the King of Sword General, D. June, remained unmoved. He stared at the big screen in front of him, constantly paying attention to the situation at the human monument. Only the King of Heaven could take this blow. Your Highness is able to serve the Crown Prince well, and this old servant is really comforted and grateful. Thank you for your hard work, Your Highness Crown Princess candidate. I will ask the palace doctor to nourish your body later. He seemed to be dealing with her like a dog servant. This is also a F***king talent, Senior Yulia sighed in her heart. At this moment, she felt like she was sitting on a carpet of needles. She rubbed her eyebrows and said, Since I'm the commander of Leviathan now, I'll order Leviathan to remove all the death marks. Is there a problem? I'm afraid not. The death marks are automatically activated by Leviathan. Fushi shook his head helplessly at this time. Currently, all the researchers in the Holy Land are working hard to remove the death marks, but the results are minimal. You didn't activate it. Senior Yulia opened her mouth in surprise. Then, she had an idea and said, Then stop it. Just stop it completely. Remove the energy. Can it run without batteries? The only way to stop the death marks is to make Leviathan's heart stop beating. Fushi shook his head and said, However, once Leviathan's heart stops beating, it means that Leviathan will die, and the Empire will lose a god-destroying weapon. We can't afford such a loss. Why don't you give this order, Your Highness Crown Princess Consort Candidate? If it's you, we can only do it. Besides, I heard that His Majesty likes you very much and even gave you Princess Yao's music box as a gift. With such great favor, I'm sure His Majesty won't blame you too much. You King bastard again. There's still time. Let's wait and see. Senior Yulia shrank her neck. That's what I'm thinking as well. The Heavenly King General smiled and stood there calmly. At this moment, the alarm in the central control room suddenly rang. Jun and Fushi both frowned at the same time. They saw that a figure had appeared on the big screen at some point in time. It was the figure that appeared in front of the human monument and the Leviathan. Senior Yulia widened her eyes and stared at the figure on the big screen in disbelief. She cursed, Isn't this? It was a young man wearing a demonic and restrained costume, the young man floated in the sky. Compared to the huge Leviathan, he was as small as a speck of dust. It feels a little different. Senior sister, Yulia, carefully sized him up at this time. Soon, her attention was attracted by the pink and purple emblem that protruded from the boy's lower abdomen. How did he do it? Just when everyone was surprised by the appearance of the demonic young man in the sky said slowly with a blank expression, "Welcome to the stage of the fantasy circus. Before the official performance, we have prepared some entertainment for everyone." With that, the demonic young man slowly stretched out his hand. Suddenly, a golden vortex appeared behind the demonic young man. The vortex began to expand like a door. A large number of high-energy reactions are detected. 34, 59, 102, 187, 300. The number is still increasing. The controller's horrified voice sounded in the control room. Commander Bismack pushed the controller away and sat down, looking at the data on the detector with a serious expression. Why are there so many high-energy reactions? Something is coming out? Commander Bismack looked up at the image on the big screen and gasped. It's coming out. From the golden vortex that opened up behind the demonic young man like a door, there was something, a large amount of something that was beginning to rush out. The first thing that appeared was a guy wearing broken armor, and his eyes. His eyes were bloody and his skin was pale. He looked like an injured person who had just walked out of the battlefield. Then, another guy who was covered in injuries. One of his arms was broken. One after another, the high-energy reaction sources on the detector broke free from the vortex one by one. Not a single one appeared, and the air seemed to have solidified a little. The suffocating feeling spread in the control room. No, in the entire Holy Land. Yaredin, Daniel, Jing-Er? When the high-energy reactions appeared one after another, the Heavenly Monarch General was also constantly shouting a name. Lord Fushi, could these be? Commander Bismack seemed to have guessed something, and his expression changed drastically as he looked up at the commander's bridge. These are the warriors buried in the monument. The one who replied was the King of Sword, Dijuan. Our former comrades. How can this be? Commander Bismack widened his eyes in disbelief. The warriors buried in the tombstones of mankind. So, these were the warriors who had fallen in the mythological war? What kind of warrior was worthy of being buried in the tombstones of mankind? Bismack was not only the commander of the Royal Knights, but he was also from the Golden Clan. Even if he did not personally participate in the war, he knew enough about it. Only the great warriors who were known as heroic spirits were qualified to be buried in the monuments of humans. These deceased warriors were all heroes in the war between humans and mythological creatures. Our opponents are. Commander Bismack sat down helplessly. Former heroes? Their souls? Inside the control room, it was dead silent. The King of Heaven, Fushi, stopped calling out the names of the deceased warriors. His expression was unprecedentedly solemn. When all the golden vortexes disappeared, the King of Heaven finally let out a sigh of relief. It was as if he was relieved that more of the deceased warriors did not appear. However, Fushi soon laughed bitterly. A total of 400. That's really a big deal. They should rest in peace, Dijuan suddenly said. Even the crown prince of the empire can't blaspheme them. The King of Sword pulled out his sword. Then, the dome of the control room opened, and Dijuan turned into a ray of light and rushed out. Hey! I'm still here. The King of Sword soared into the sky, but he was still chained to the person who was suspected to be the crown princess consort. Finally, senior sister, Yulia, who was sitting on the commander's seat, was dragged out with a whoosh. Help! The mask of fear was tied up. Finally, is it going to start? Holy Land, a prisoner shelter. A sewer pipe suddenly burst open, and the prisoners began to be flooded. At this moment, the Witch of Turbidity stood on her tiptoes on the bed and looked outside the small iron window thoughtfully. A sad stage, the Witch of Turbidity murmured to herself and then fell silent. After a moment of silence, the Witch of Turbidity suddenly took a deep breath and screamed, "Help! The sh*t is going to drown me! Help! Why am I so unlucky? I'm so angry!" End of this chapter. Chapter 2237. The King of Swords was too powerful. The dead human heroes couldn't even withstand one strike from him and were directly chopped down. However, Yulia was in a bad situation. She was like a human kite flying around in the high-altitude battlefield. The area of her psychological trauma continued to expand. However, no matter how powerful the King of Swords was, he couldn't withstand the number of dead human heroes. After the first wave of 400 dead heroes appeared, the demonic young man actually used Treasure of the Dead again. In an instant, hundreds of dead human heroes appeared again. The King of Swords couldn't kill them all at once, so hundreds of dead human heroes directly landed on the surface of Leviathan. Seeing this, Commander Bismack had no choice but to order the knights to fight back. As for why it was him, it was very simple. Because the King of Swords was in the main control room and Lord Fushi was missing, Commander Bismack was destined to take on all of this. "We can't let these guys invade the interior of Leviathan." Commander Bismack took a deep breath and directly shouted, "Men, bring me my armor." In the passage, the King of Swords slightly raised his head. Above his head, some dust started to fall due to the vibrations of the battle. He covered his ears with both hands and muttered, "I can't hear you, I can't hear you, I can't hear you." He didn't intend to participate in this battle at all. Inside the huge body of Leviathan, he turned and turned, gradually going deeper and deeper. Not long after, he arrived at a secluded room. In the room, Madanzo, who was suspected to be from the light race, was suspended in the air. Actually, 2 of the 6-winged Madanzo's wings had been torn off, and the remaining 4 were like leaves without water, drooping down weakly. Her consciousness seemed to be not very clear, and her eyes were blurred. The King of Swords walked closer to Madanzo. Originally, he should have dealt with her more carefully, but he was delayed by Yulia. At this time, he clapped his hands, and the chains hanging Madanzo were instantly released. The 6-winged young man directly fell to the ground. "You don't seem to be convinced?" Tian Wang squatted down and said. At this moment, Madanzo's vision gradually regained its clarity. He moved his body and slowly sat up. He said expressionlessly, "The posture of a victor?" The celestial monarch shook his head and said, "Thank you." Madanzo couldn't help but frown. Heaven Monarch General Fushi smiled and said, "After all, it's been a long time since I've exercised so intensely. Yaya, it really feels good." Madanzo immediately fell silent. This guy was comparable to that prince, Desolate. Heaven Monarch Jiang said, "I'm very curious. How did you escape from Nirvana Ocean?" Madanzo asked calmly, "Why must it be from Nirvana Ocean?" Heaven Monarch Fushi smiled. "If it was born naturally outside of the Nirvana Ocean, then I will have to consider if I should cleanse the Radiant Race's bloodline outside of the Nirvana Ocean." This guy. Madanzo instantly chuckled. What was in the page was only a part of his consciousness. If it really died, it would only cause the main consciousness to be depressed for a period of time. Therefore, he wasn't afraid of death at all. "Why are you so afraid that the Radiant Race will grow stronger one day? Speaking of which, what the hell is the Radiant Race?" Fushi shook his head and said, "Or rather, there has always been an operation to cleanse the Radiant Race. It's just that before you appeared, I wasn't interested at all. You also know that travel expenses are very tight. It's very troublesome to go out." Madanzo smiled mysteriously and said, "Compared to a loser like me, shouldn't your attention be more on that shitty Crown Prince? Although I agree with your evaluation of the Crown Prince, as a loyal subject of the royal family, I can only silence you." Like a cat toying with a mouse, Heaven Monarch suddenly poked Madanzo's eyes with his finger. His finger directly pierced through Madanzo's eyeball. Madanzo instantly groaned and clenched her teeth. This guy's attack didn't just affect the body, it could even affect the willpower. Heaven Monarch generals were the Empire's strongest military force. Madanzo had already experienced how terrifying they were. Moreover, there were as many as 7 of them. Although it was only a part of his consciousness that entered the page world, after the battle, Heaven Monarch General's strength was probably only the tip of the iceberg. If the characters that appeared in the Book of Gaia were only impressions, then the main body of the impression would definitely exist outside of the Book of Gaia. Although all the pages were derived from fantasy, the derivation would definitely follow the basic laws. The logic of the few page worlds that Madanzo had experienced was self-consistent. In other words, the powerful creatures that appeared in the page world definitely existed in the void dimension. Heaven Monarch General Fushi, in the void dimension, at least, he was at the level of the top forces in the void dimension. In the kingdom of heaven, he would at least be at the level of a sage. In the heavenly court, he would be at the level of a true immortal, right? In the transcendent organization, he would probably be at the level of a king. Madanzo continued to think that the Empire had a total of 7 such monarch generals. However, based on the understanding that there were actually 8 monarch generals in total, the evaluation of the Empire's high-end forces still needed to be reserved. Moreover, there was the even more terrifying royal family. Such a huge force, which corner of the void dimension did it exist in? With the war of the Kingdom of Heaven's army, the spread of the religion widely, yet there was no knowledge of it. This was very illogical. Could it be a force from the old era of the void dimension? The void dimension had once changed between the old and the new era. The current void dimension forces, such as the Kingdom of Heaven, the Heavenly Court, the Transcendent and so on, were also born in the new era. Everything about the old era could only be deciphered through the various dangers, secret places and relics scattered in the void dimension. Therefore, if the Book of Gaia was a powerful void artifact born in the old era, Madanzo would also believe it. Following this line of thought, the various characters involved in the Book of Gaia should naturally be residents of the void dimension from the old era. Your mental activity seems to be quite active? Yes, after all, it is cursing you. Madanzo looked up, one of her eyes was bleeding, but her face was pale, but she still had a smile. She looked somewhat scary. What are you thinking about? Heaven Monarch General Fushi asked curiously. Madanzo said indifferently, I am thinking, it is so lively outside, is it really okay for you to neglect your duty here? Heaven Monarch General smiled and said, You have to believe that your partner has the ability to overcome all difficulties. Madanzo shrugged and said, That legendary, Kai Emperor, is also jumping around outside, and as far as I know his sealed power should have been unlocked, and it was your crown prince who gave him the key. Didn't that sword monarch general tell you about this? Heavenly Monarch Jiang Fushi blinked his eyes, a hint of surprise flashed across his face. Madanzo's remaining eye suddenly opened, revealing a shocked expression as she looked behind Heaven Monarch General Fushi. Kai? Heaven Monarch General Fushi couldn't help but open his mouth in shock, then shook his head and chuckled. I thought you wouldn't be so bored. This kind of TV series hasn't used such a scene for a long time. Bang! His body crazily slammed to the side, directly smashing the metal wall into pieces. Heaven Monarch General Fushi sat up from the debris of the metal wall, his head full of dust, and there was even a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. You really didn't lie? Someone was standing in front of Madanzo at this moment, one of his feet was even raised high. The great hero of the shadow almost kicked the founder emperor, the legendary Kai Emperor, to death. Young man, are you okay? Kai smiled at this moment, revealing a mouthful of white teeth that could still shine. With that, Kai directly turned and kicked, and the airflow from the kick directly cut off the chain on Madanzo's body. Madanzo was startled, and couldn't help but smile bitterly, muttering, "Another king level." Why did she have a feeling that in this page world of the Holy Land, king level was lower than dogs, and indescribable level was everywhere? Hallucination? Young man, what are you muttering about? It was unknown if it was because the metal dragon bone had been removed, but at this moment, Emperor Kai was speaking so loudly and in such high spirits. "I said you're very handsome." Madanzo's face was full of admiration. "Am I?" Kai Emperor shook his head. "Among the shadow spirits, my appearance is relatively at the bottom. Maybe you haven't seen enough beautiful things, so you think everything you see is handsome. You have to increase your knowledge in daily life. Cultivation is a lifelong career." Madanzo shook her head and was about to speak. But Kai Emperor suddenly shouted, "Young man, let's talk later. Wait until I kick this slippery guy to death first." The King of Heaven. He was nowhere to be seen, and no one knew when he slipped away. "You were so cool when you beat me. Who are you looking down on?" Madanzo indignantly patted the dust on her body. "Great hero, don't kick him to death, just kick him a few more times." Kai Emperor, who was far away, gave her a thumbs up. "Simple-minded. There are benefits to being simple-minded, right?" Madanzo laughed dryly, then stretched out her hand and pressed the wound on her blinded eye. White lightning flashed, and the wound began to heal rapidly. The ruptured eyeball also recovered in a short time. She blinked her eyes, and her vision also recovered. "Do I need to heal myself to recover from this kind of injury?" Madanzo lowered her head and muttered, "Then who gave me the resurrection token when I died last time? Oh, there's still someone here?" She turned around and saw a girl looking at her curiously, the half-elf girl, Karina. Both of them looked at each other. Karina waved her hand first. "Hi, noble young master." Madanzo was stunned. "What are you doing here at Leviathan?" Karina said with a distressed expression, "Just now, that guy with muscles all over his head said that he wanted me to have a good look at his fighting posture. He said that it might be useful in the future, so... Speaking of which, while that guy is not here, young master, can you take me away from this dangerous place? I can consider having a date with you for the purpose of staying the night." Madanzo shrugged and said helplessly, "No, I'm just a child." The half-elf girl was even more distressed at this time. The distressed thing was unknown. Madanzo thought for a while and said, "Then, why did this guy come to Leviathan?" Karina said, "I think he said that he wanted to take out the heart of Leviathan. This can solve the problem of the death mark?" Madanzo's eyes suddenly lit up. "I'm not sure." "Then let's make sure." Madanzo directly grabbed Karina's arm and flew up. She felt that it was more dangerous. The half-elf girl couldn't help but sigh at this time. People began to spontaneously come around the human monument and pay close attention. Yesterday, on the flyers scattered on the streets of the Holy Land, there was only the time of execution of World Prince Cicero, but there was no specific location. However, the fact that the divine weapon Leviathan stopped in front of the human monument seemed to mean something. People crowded at the various exits of the Holy Land, and it was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Some people were struggling for the last time. Some people had already given up and returned to their homes to accompany their loved ones. Some people chose to come to the human monument. Perhaps, before the end of their lives, they could see with their own eyes how the prince, who had great power over the world, was executed. They could die without regrets, right? On the ground and on the rooftop of the building, a group of demi-humans led by the leader, Yen of the Drowning Dog Bandits, were nervously watching the battle between the King General and the undead through various telescopes. There wasn't much time left before the execution. A lot of civilians also came. Yen looked at the civilians hiding on the street and couldn't help but frown. At this time, a demi-human leader suddenly said, "This may be a good thing. If we can cause chaos among these civilians, it should be beneficial to us." The demi-humans were demi-humans, and humans were humans. The demi-humans at the bottom of the Holy Land didn't care about the life and death of these humans. Yi Yen didn't care about the hatred between races, but he could consider this proposal. Guys, look. There's movement on the monument. On the human monument on the huge platform, a figure slowly floated out from the bright and clean floor. The leader of the fantasy circus, magician, was wearing a white shawl and formal attire. He wore a white top hat and a white eye patch on his glasses. The culprit of all this slowly walked to the edge of the monument. Thank you, everyone, for coming. He faced the battlefield, faced the Holy Land, and also faced the imperial palace that hung high in the distance. He slowly bent down. The opening ceremony was a gift. End of this chapter. Chapter 2238. Bang! A powerful explosion suddenly appeared on the upper left shell of the Leviathan. Then, a figure flew out at high speed with his back bent. It was Lord Fushi, the King of Heaven of the Empire. The King of Sword was still killing, purifying the hero. Seeing something flying at high speed, he shook the chain on his arm without thinking. This kind of shaking would cause the end of the chain to shake greatly. Senior sister, Yulia, naturally took the brunt of it and put on the painful mask again. The main reason was that she was shaken too much, and it was as uncomfortable as motion sickness. Instantly, the shaking chain rolled up the King of Heaven to the front of the King of Sword, Dijuan. The two kings of the Empire looked at each other. The King of Heaven blinked his eyes and quickly waved his hand, greeting with a smile. Hi. Why are you? The King of Sword frowned. I met a troublesome guy. The King of Heaven looked innocent. The King of Sword frowned again, and then he turned around and blocked with his light sword. Behind him, a huge dark red steam condensed into a terrifying shadow like an azure dragon. The light sword blocked the dark red azure dragon. Dijuan took a deep breath and pushed the light sword with all his strength. The sword light was extinguished, and the dark red steam appeared. Emperor Kai appeared. You really took off the dragon bone. The King of Sword looked a little serious. Emperor Kai was floating in the air. He didn't have the ability to fly, but he could kick the air at a terrifying speed. In short, he could do a movement in the air that could stop as long as he had legs. How's the power? Emperor Kai showed his shiny white teeth. The King of Sword said seriously, It's not as fierce as before. You've become weak, Kai. Emperor Kai said indifferently, You should be like me, starving for hundreds of years before saying this. I'm going to kick you two to death first, and then kick that young, glorious son to death. Thank you everyone for coming. The voice wasn't loud, but it was clear, and it seemed to be an unexpected coincidence. The main character has appeared. Kai Huang slowly let out a sigh of relief. He actually gave up on attacking the two king generals. The dark red steam on his body exploded. This legendary hero's skin had actually turned crimson red at this moment. The Sword King immediately snorted coldly. No matter what, allowing this criminal to attack the imperial family, and ignoring the imperial crown prince at that, was the greatest dereliction of duty. With a wave of his lightsaber, the King of Swords would still directly strike from behind Kai Huang. They were not young anymore, so naturally, they would not talk about martial ethics. The sword light flashed, and the two dead heroes who couldn't kill the two heroes directly rushed toward the sword light like moths to a flame. The sword light was broken, and the two dead heroes also disappeared instantly. Emperor Jun and Fushi couldn't help but frown at the same time. After the two heroes disappeared, another figure stood in front of them again. Surprisingly, it was the demonic young man who had attracted a large number of hero death. He was wearing a strange and restrained outfit. Daphne. No, Dasher. Yulia whispered at this moment. She remembered the young man's appearance at this moment. He was the older brother of the pair of siblings that she had met when she first arrived at the Holy Light Kingdom. However, looking at the demonic young man, Dasher's strange outfit and the tattoo on his lower abdomen, Yulia couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, the boss knows how to play. Get out of the way. The King of Swords didn't care who was blocking the way and directly shouted coldly. However, the demonic young man's eyes were hollow. He just raised his hand and held a magic wand. He waved the magic wand and it instantly turned into a long black stick. At this moment, the demonic young man actually took out a note to fight. Leave this guy to me. The King of Swords pinched up his sleeves and said with a generous smile, I'll bite the hard bone. After all, we are brothers who will be buried in the same cave in the future. However, Emperor June took a deep look at Fushi and then nodded. He said indifferently, be careful. There is something wrong with this guy. It seems that he has the support of the glorious sun. He is indeed a hard bone. The King of Swords blinked. Is that so? At this moment, without waiting for the King of Swords' response, Emperor June directly pulled the chain and pulled Yulia in front of him. He looked straight at her and said, The Crown Prince is right there. Since you said that you are the candidate of the Crown Princess, you must be able to stop the Crown Prince, right? If I say no, will I be cut in half? Of course. The senior sister had to pat her chest and said shamelessly, I'm almost in the shape of your Crown Prince. What do you think? Very good. Emperor June nodded. Then, I'm sorry to offend you again. Yulia blinked subconsciously as if something was wrong. She felt that the world was spinning around her. The King of Swords swung her up and spun her around hundreds of times. Under the effect of the horrifying centrifugal force, Yulia was sent flying like a cannonball. Help! Help! Aha! The demonic young man wanted to chase after her, but he had already waved his long black stick. However, a figure stood on one end of the stick with ease. Little brother, your opponent is me. The King of Swords smiled like a spring breeze. The demonic young man looked stupefied and didn't move at all. The King of Swords blinked and said, Little brother, we are just workers. You don't have to fight with your life. Let's pretend. I will first use the Black Tiger Steel's heart, and then you will use the Black Tiger Steel's heart. Let's go to the clouds and fight? The demonic young man was expressionless, but the long black stick in his hand suddenly smashed down. The King of Swords' eyes narrowed, and he crossed his hands to block the long black stick. However, the moment he blocked the stick, his face changed slightly. His hands were almost broken. The demonic young man in front of him was glowing with a huge gray airflow. The dead heroes turned into power and directly entered the demonic young man's body. Facing the demonic young man whose power was increasing crazily, the King of Swords couldn't help but scratch his cheek and murmur, I kind of want to change places with Emperor June. In the end, the demonic young man who had absorbed the power of hundreds of dead heroes calmed down. Only the long black stick in his hand had lightning flowing around it from time to time. Fushi exhaled slowly and said indifferently, Let's laze around on the clouds. A cross-shaped weapon suddenly appeared under Fushi's feet. At the same time, a huge light pattern in the shape of the 8 trigrams spread out instantly. 10 directions. Change. On the battlefield, the King of Swords and the demonic young man disappeared instantly. Azure Dragon. The dark red azure dragon swooped down, as if it was going to swallow the human monument directly. The new, glorious sun, let me see your ability. Da-da-da-da. Captain J looked up and saw the azure dragon descending. However, he calmly took out a magic wand. When the azure dragon came, the magic wand instantly touched the azure dragon. In a split second, starting from the head, the azure dragon turned into a blossoming flower. Emperor Kai landed on the ground from the blossoming flower with a dumbfounded look on his face. How could your glorious sun power? Captain J shook his head gently. At the same time, a human cannonball instantly hit the flat surface of the human monument. Senior Yulia felt that her bones were broken. After falling to the ground, she rolled all the way to the feet of Captain J, and then she collapsed with her arms and legs spread out. Before Senior Yulia could catch her breath, A light flashed, and the King of Swords had already set foot on the human monument. Captain J looked at the chain connecting the two of them. He was a little surprised and frowned slightly. The King of Swords said seriously, "Your Highness, this woman said that she is your concubine candidate. I can't be sure, so I can only bring her with me temporarily. I didn't mean to offend her, and the chain is long enough, so this lady's physiological activities are not affected." On the side, Akai Huang couldn't help but twitch his mouth. He actually felt a desire to live from this Sword King General? "My concubine candidate, where is she?" Captain J looked at senior sister, Yulia, who had just caught her breath, and asked curiously, "When did this happen?" Senior J hugged his thigh with tears and snot, and she said pitifully, "I'm already a member of your circus. You have to take responsibility. Have you forgotten? Last time in Count Dekria's airship study, I was almost hit by your hand. Isn't that enough?" Captain J shook his head and said coldly, "You and Daphne came from the same place, right?" Senior Yulia's expression changed slightly, but she calmed down. Captain J shook his head again and said indifferently, "Fine, the royal family has found too many so-called concubine candidates for me. It doesn't make a difference if there is one more or one less. You can stand for now. It's about to start." "What the F***ck?" Senior Yulia still couldn't react. Her mind was filled with Captain J's words. Did he decide so hastily? "Your Highness, please stop this meaningless behavior," the King of Swords said loudly. "Now that Leviathan is out of control and the Holy Land is about to be destroyed, Your Highness, please calm this matter." Captain J shook his head and said, "It's not that Leviathan is out of control, it's just that it's not under your control. You can find the person who activated Leviathan." "Your Highness, you mean Fushi?" The King of Swords couldn't help but frown. Captain J didn't answer. He just walked straight to the center of the monument platform. A beam of light appeared, and 3 figures suddenly emerged from the ground in the center of the monument platform. They were Prince Desolate and Princess Angelique, who were kidnapped. After Prince Desolate appeared, he looked around curiously, especially Princess Angelique, who was next to him. Prince Desolate was even more focused on observing her. Angelique was currently dressed like a bunny girl. She was biting her lips and crossing her arms in front of her chest with an angry expression on her face. "Big news. I didn't expect that Sister Huang Angelique, who has always been serious, is actually such a person." Prince Desolate widened his eyes in disbelief and said with a smile, "3 times. No, I'll kill you 10 times. Princess Angelique squeezed out a hateful voice from her throat. Prince Desolate clicked his tongue as if he hadn't had enough. He said, "I think it's worth it to kill you a few more times, sister." "Damn it." Princess Angelique gritted her teeth and glared at the King of Swords in front of her. She said coldly, "Emperor June, why are you still standing there? Do you want me to disgrace the royal family?" The King of Swords hesitated for a moment and said that he couldn't do anything for the time being. He smiled bitterly and said, "I'm sorry, Your Highness Angelique. Crown Prince's godless field has been activated." At this moment, an overwhelming number of airships appeared around the human monument. It was likely that all the airships in the Holy Land had moved here. On Leviathan the knights were still fighting against some heroes, but Commander Bismack left the battlefield halfway and issued an order as a temporary commander, summoning all the defense forces in the Holy Land. "I'm Bismack. Strange bandit clown, you have nowhere to run. Just surrender." The voice of Bismack, the former commander of the Royal Knights, echoed in the air. He was standing on one of the airships, wearing a military uniform and a stern face. He shouted loudly, "Give up this place and release the prince, and the princess. Otherwise, I'll have to punish you." His voice reverberated in the air. Hundreds and thousands of airships were approaching step by step. The annihilator on the airships had been activated. It seemed like they were going to fight a war. Princess Angelique was stunned. Prince, desolate, couldn't help but open his mouth. The King of Swords frowned and didn't say anything. Emperor Kai rubbed his chin and looked at Emperor June curiously. He asked, "Kid, what kind of idiot commander is this? Don't tell me he doesn't know the identity of the strange thief, clown, all this time?" Emperor June heaved a sigh of relief. Bismack is a bit prideful, and no one took the initiative to tell him. Emperor Kai couldn't help but open his mouth. What a pitiful child. Commander J shook his head and said calmly, "It doesn't matter. I think it's good to have more spectators." Commander J waved the magic wand in his hand. Prince Desolate and Princess Angelique's bodies floated up at the same time. Then, two huge wooden barrels suddenly appeared and covered the two of them, leaving only their heads exposed. "Isn't this?" Senior Yulia opened her mouth in shock. "Isn't this thing used by the circus to perform sword magic?" Captain J held a long and thin sword and took the lead to arrive in front of Prince Desolate. End of this chapter. Chapter 2239. Report: Princess Angelique and Prince Desolate have been found. On the airship, Commander Bismack's expression turned solemn when he heard the report from his subordinate. He quickly took over the monitor from his subordinate and watched everything on the human monument. He saw that the strange thief clown who had humiliated him for his entire life was walking toward Prince Desolate with a sword in his hand. Commander Bismack's expression changed drastically. "Mr. Emperor June is also on the airship. Why didn't he move? What happened on the airship?" "Sir, we can't wait any longer." Commander Bismack gritted his teeth and ordered, "Mobile troop, land immediately." There were long-range cannons on the airship, but how could they fire at the human monument? The thin and long sharp sword knocked on the drum-shaped wooden barrel lightly, proving its hardness. In the wooden barrel, Prince Desolate looked like a steamed person with only his head above the water. At this moment, he was curiously watching Commander J.'s every move. "There seems to be no mechanism in this wooden barrel," Prince Desolate said in confusion. "It's against the rules to perform this magic trick with my immortal body." However, Commander J didn't care. The thin and long sharp sword in his hand directly pierced into one of the holes in the wooden barrel. Prince Desolate was stunned at first, and then his eyes widened slightly. The sharp sword slowly pierced through the other end of the wooden barrel. There was a trace of crimson color on the tip of the sword, blood. "You are serious?" Prince Desolate exclaimed in disbelief. Then, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Commander J still didn't speak. Like a magic trick, another long sword of the same style appeared in his hand. Then, he slowly pierced it into the other hole in the wooden barrel. Prince Desolate's face twitched a few times. This kind of instinctive twitch caused by the pain in his body was obviously impossible to act out. The sword might have pierced into his lungs or other organs and then penetrated his body bit by bit. This kind of pain was obviously more torturous than piercing through his body with a single strike. After the third strike, Prince Desolate spat out another mouthful of blood. A scream sounded. It was the first time that Prince Desolate made such a tragic scream since he appeared. "It hurts. So painful. I'm not playing anymore. I'm not playing anymore. Ouch, 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 ouch." In just a short period of time, Commander J had already inserted 3 sharp swords into the barrel. Only then did he stop. Looking at Prince Desolate's pale face, Commander J turned to look at the other wooden barrel beside him. Here, Princess Angelique's expression was uncertain. She subconsciously met Captain J's gaze, and her lips moved slightly. Captain J said indifferently, "He can't be killed because the method is wrong. Angie, if we keep the weapon in his body, he will only wander between life and death. If you really want to torture him, what you did in the past was too petty. Angelique was obviously a nickname, but Princess Angelique was clearly not satisfied with it. Because Commander J had once again inserted the fourth sword into Prince Desolate's barrel, the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh sword. Some kind of mysterious power was constantly recovering Prince Desolate from the state of death. However, just as Commander J said, the weapon stayed in his body, making the revived Prince Desolate immediately face death again. Wandering between life and death, reincarnating in the calm after the screams and death. I saw that you will die, and you will die very miserably. Suddenly, the words that the Witch of Turbidity once said rang in Senior Yulia's ears. She looked at this performance in a daze and couldn't help but murmur absent-mindedly, "So, it's such a tragic death." Looking at Commander J.'s back, Senior Yulia couldn't help but feel a chill crawling up her spine. This was no longer an execution, but a torture. But even so, the fact that Prince Desolate still couldn't die was still in front of her eyes. Even though he screamed again and again, the King of Sword, Dejuan, just looked on coldly. On one hand, it was an indisputable fact that he lost his power in the godless realm. On the other hand, he probably knew that even though he was suffering this kind of torture, Prince Desolate was indeed immortal. The royal immortal monster. "Save me! Sister, save me! Save me!" At this time, Prince Desolate's screams had turned into terrified screams. His face was distorted, and he cried bitterly as he looked at Princess Angelique. "Save me! Sister! Save me! I won't make you angry any more. I beg you. You can kill me however you want in the future. I'll let you kill me. Save me." Too noisy. Commander J picked up the long sword again. But this time, the long sword didn't pierce into the hole in the wooden barrel, but directly pierced into Prince Desolate's mouth. From the mouth, it directly penetrated the back of Prince Desolate's head. When the blood-stained crimson sword slowly penetrated the back of Prince Desolate's head, Prince Desolate began to twitch crazily. Tears. Those were tears of pain and fear. The immortal body was no longer the prince's asset. Instead, it had become the prince's nightmare. Saliva and blood slid down from the corners of his mouth. Prince Desolate's eyelids closed again and then opened again and again. His eyes gradually lost their luster after experiencing life and death again and again. The transition between life and death again and again, the coexistence of life and death. Prince Desolate had become Schrödinger's Desolate in another sense. Enough. Enough. It was already the 21st sword strike. Princess Angelique's slightly pale voice suddenly sounded. "He's already like this. What can you do if you stab him a few more times?" Angie. Commander J said indifferently, "Killing him now is much less than killing him all the time." Princess Angelique subconsciously fell silent. Commander J said, "The execution of Desolate ends here. Next, it's your turn." He held the 20-second long sword and approached Princess Angelique's wooden barrel. Princess Angelique subconsciously looked up at him. "Commander J said slowly, "You don't have the ability of Desolate, so you probably only need one sword strike. You won't feel the pain of Desolate." Princess Angelique lowered her head and said faintly, "Do you hate us so much?" "I can't say that." Commander J shook his head. "I just want to take this opportunity to do something." Princess Angelique suddenly raised her head, took a deep breath, and said, "You're wrong and you're wrong. Even if you really kill me, kill Desolate, and kill everyone, that person won't do anything to you. In his eyes, you're always the only successor. Whether it's me or Desolate, we're just tools created by that man to relieve his loneliness." Commander J said indifferently, "Am I wrong?" "Maybe." I said, "Angie, why don't you correct me like before? Can you do it? If you can't, I can only continue." Since you've given me this kind of power to do whatever I want, please be prepared that I will really do whatever I want." The 22nd sword pierced through the hole in the barrel without hesitation. Princess Angelique's mind was blank at this time. She looked at Commander J's eyes as if she felt all the despair, until the sword slowly emerged from the other side of the wooden barrel. But it was still a silver-white blade. There was no blood stain on it. Her body didn't have the piercing pain. Princess Angelique couldn't help but be stunned. A trace of complicated joy flashed in her eyes. She was about to speak. Just as she was about to speak, the 23rd sword, at this time, quietly pierced into another hole in the wooden barrel. In the wooden barrel, the sword directly pierced through Princess Angelique's shoulder. The heart-wrenching pain made Princess Angelique's pupils contract violently in an instant. The complicated joy instantly turned into disbelief and surprise. Then, sadness began to infect her. "You're worse than desolate." She squeezed out a miserable voice from her throat. "Just like that person, we're just your tools." Commander J still didn't speak. His palm turned again, and another long sword appeared in his hand. "Felon, clown. Give up resistance." At this moment, hundreds of figures rushed to the top of the monument in an instant. Knights wearing strange three-dimensional mobile armors directly landed on the ground. In an instant, hundreds of elite knights, seeing the miserable situation of Prince Desolate and Princess Angelique, had no time to think, and had already attacked the ferocious strange thief, a clown. The audience shouldn't be on the stage. Have some self-awareness. Commander J waved the long sword in his hand as if he was waving a magic wand. Hundreds of powerful elite knights were instantly surrounded by bubbles, and then they lost their balance and floated. They looked like ordinary soap bubbles, but no matter how they attacked, they couldn't break them. The knights were horrified. However, at this moment, an angry roar suddenly sounded. In the sky, a huge airship was crazily crashing into the human monument. On the airship, the person at the helm was Commander Bismack. He saw the strange thief, clown, killing Prince Desolate, and also saw a clown attacking Princess Angelique. He couldn't care less if he would destroy the human monument. "Let's end this. Clown." Commander Bismack's face had a trace of madness. "I vowed to serve the royal family. However, it has been 3 years. For 3 whole years I lived in humiliation. Today I will erase the stain in my life." He wanted to crash into the human monument with the airship. This guy, no one told him about this. Commander J blinked his eyes and seemed to be surprised. Commander J shook his head and thought for a while. Then, he pointed the magic sword in his hand again, and a huge bubble was formed, covering the airship that was about to crash into it. However, when the huge bubble was about to envelop the airship suddenly exploded. The explosion of this airship was very powerful. After the earth-shaking explosion, the horrifying airflow began to crash into the monument platform. The people who lost their abilities under the influence of godless realm were instantly blown away by this horrifying airflow. Instantly, Senior Sister Yulia grabbed the corner of Emperor Kai's clothes, and Emperor Kai grabbed the calf of Emperor Kai with his long hands. The royal general kicked Emperor Kai's face with disdain. "Die!" In the turbulent airflow, a figure with a sword in his hand flew toward Commander J with the help of the airflow. "Bismarck, Commander!" Captain J calmly let out a sigh of relief. With a light tap of his magic sword, the Bismarck commander that was flying towards him was instantly enveloped by a bubble. Taking advantage of that terrifying bubble, the Bismarck commander was directly blown out of the monument platform. Far, far away. "I won't give up. Clown! I will come back." Then, the Bismarck commander became a star and disappeared in the sky. The strong airflow gradually calmed down. After the airship's explosion, the situation on the monument didn't change. Commander J came to Princess Angelique's wooden bucket again. Then, goodbye to our memories, Sister Angie. Commander J raised the magic sword in his hand. Her Royal Highness moved her lips. Are you serious? Our memories, you don't care? The magic sword was still mercilessly stabbing into the sword hole. But at this moment, a cold light shot out and directly shot into the sword hole. At this moment, a small flying knife was inserted in front of the sword hole, blocking it. Commander J frowned slightly and threw the knife in the direction where the cold light came from. Outside the monument, a huge balloon full of patches slowly rose up. The flying dagger was obviously shot out from a car under the balloon. Then, the rope connecting the car and the big patched balloon was cut, and the car fell directly on the monument platform. At the same time, a man with a cross-shaped scar on his face was sitting on the roof of the car. Driving a car directly on the monument of humans, I'm the first person among the gods. The leader of Yi Yen, on the roof of the car, chuckled and jumped down from the car. Hello, Mr. Clown? No, it should be the Crown Prince of the Empire. Last time, we didn't have a chance to talk at the Turbid Witch's place. If you want an autograph, wait for a while. Commander J chuckled. I have to continue my performance. That's difficult. The leader of Yi Yen was calm at this time, but in fact, he was panicking and his palms were sweating. I personally brought all the members of Your Highness Circus here. As he spoke, he opened the door of the car. All the members of the Fantasy Circus, including Qin Tian, had fainted. Commander J was expressionless. The leader of Yi Yen said slowly, "This is a relatively low-level method, but we really don't want to die under the death mark. Please forgive us, Your Highness, and please give up. We don't want to be buried with these two princes and princesses." In the car, there were already people from the bandits who placed sharp weapons directly on the circus member's neck. Commander J sighed slowly, then, his face slightly froze. At this time, there was a sudden vibration on the monument, and the source of the vibration was from the position where Princess Angelique was locked. Commander J turned around and saw streaks of pure golden airflow rising from Princess Angelique's body like smoke. The regiment commander blinked and muttered softly. Finally, the golden airflow rose faster and faster. Princess Angelique suddenly raised her head, and a clear omega mark appeared on her forehead. Her eyes turned into a bright golden color, and at the same time, the wooden barrel that imprisoned her body exploded. Her Highness' long hair fluttered in the wind. She gripped the sharp sword that had pierced her shoulder and pulled it out bit by bit. There was no trace of pain on her face. At the same time, a strange ripple began to spread across the flat floor of the monument. Instantly, as if it was ignited, a huge amount of dark red steam rose from Kai Huang's body after being kicked by the Sword King for a long time. Silent Field disappeared. No, it was cancelled. Kai Huang looked at the abnormal state of Princess Angelique in disbelief and exclaimed, "This is the third glorious sun?" Even though she was still wearing the bunny girl's equipment, the sword-wielding princess emitted a powerful aura. She waved the long sword in her hand. Another wooden barrel exploded, and all the sharp swords that pierced Prince Desolate's body shattered and disappeared in an instant. Prince Desolate knelt on the ground, gasping for breath. "No matter what, this guy is my younger brother." Princess Angelique looked at J.S. Commander indifferently. "Only I, as his elder sister, can kill him. You can't do it either." Prince Desolate covered his throat, and the pain on his face gradually disappeared. Hearing those words, he opened his mouth in shock. "Elder sister, you really love me." One sword. The sword light exploded, and Prince Desolate's head was chopped off. "You talk too much." Only Angelique's cold voice could be heard echoing in the air. Prince Desolate's body obediently picked up his head and put it back on. Then, he covered his mouth with fear. Princess Angelique snorted coldly. She waved the long sword in her hand and went straight to J.S. Commander, saying indifferently, "I'll correct you. My stupid younger brother. This reminds me of a lot of embarrassing things. JAS Commander chuckled and blocked with the magic sword in his hand. The moment the swords collided, the human monument shattered instantly. End of this chapter. Chapter 2240. The monument shattered. The human monument, which contained the heroic spirits from the mythical war, shattered, and the sky above the Holy Land changed dramatically. Countless heroic spirits rushed out from the shattered monument. Hundreds of ghosts, thousands of ghosts, tens of thousands of ghosts wandered around. The howls of the undead accompanied the sound of the wind, making the entire Holy Land sing a sad song. People's expressions changed. However, this was just the beginning. Next, they saw the collapse of the human monument. It shattered inch by inch until it finally fell down and turned into a huge pile of rubble. The leader of the Yi Yen pirates didn't expect that he would fall to the ground in such a sorry state as soon as he stepped onto the human monument. The members of the Drowning Dog pirates and the demi-humans that were gathered here were scattered by the collapse of the monument. Some of them were buried in the rubble. The human monument was equivalent to the achievements of humans, but at the same time, it was also equivalent to the humiliation of all the descendants of mythical creatures. The collapse of the human monument, to the descendants of mythical creatures, should be a big event worthy of celebration. However, the leader of the Yi Yen pirates couldn't feel happy at this moment. The death mark of the Leviathan still existed. The lives of all the living people in the Holy Land were still in the hands of the god-destroying weapon, the Leviathan. A sad world, a monument stage. Is Ms. Ying's dream going to come true? The leader of the Yi Yen pirates gritted his teeth and climbed up from the rubble. His ability had brought him to the center of the stage, but it seemed that he had reached his limit. He couldn't do anything about what would happen next. This isn't something that you need to participate in. You were just affected by it. That's all. You were messed up by fate. This world will continue. Live well. The voice seemed to be far and near. The leader of the Yi Yen pirates instinctively looked for the source of the voice. On a piece of rubble in the rubble, he saw a black-haired man. The leader of the Yi Yen pirates couldn't see the man's face. He could only see the man's back. Therefore, he didn't know the man's age. At this moment, the man raised his head and silently looked at the sky. The sky was the battlefield between Princess Angelique and the Crown Prince of the Empire. Yi Yen was about to speak, but the black-haired man on the rock had already disappeared. It was like an illusion. Yi Yen subconsciously rubbed his eyes. My injuries? Due to falling from a high altitude and colliding with a falling rock, his sternum was almost broken. However, at some point in time, it had already recovered to its original state. Other than the dust on his body, Yi Yen found that his condition was unusually good. It's that black-haired man. Judging from his voice, he seems to be a young guy. But who could it be? As the saying goes, as long as there's smoke, there's no harm. Besides, Godless Domain has been cancelled out, and a senpai Yulia has recovered her black soul form. Her black soul form is almost completely immune to physical attacks, so she won't die no matter how many rocks fall on her. Wisps of mist floated out of the cracks in the stone and gathered together. Senior sister Yulia shook her dust-covered hair. Her condition was still quite good. The only fly in the ointment was that the shackles on her wrists were still connected to the chains. At the other end of the chain was the King of Swords General, Di Jun. At this moment, Di Jun was standing on top of a pile of rocks not far away. He lowered his head and looked at the completely broken human monument with a slightly complicated expression. Yulia hesitated for a moment and finally climbed up slowly. You are sad for the dead people in the monument? The King of Swords General was silent for a moment. Finally, it turned into a long sigh. I don't know where to start cleaning. F***ck. I forgot this guy's character. Senior sister, Yulia, didn't know where to start complaining. You don't seem to care about the conflict between them at all? Senior sister had to ask tentatively. Jun said indifferently, both of them are a glorious sun. I can't even defeat both of them. How can I care about their conflict? So realistic. Senior sister, Yulia, nodded in agreement. Then she frowned and said, but I get it. Why did the commander? Why did the crown prince deliberately provoke Princess Angelique? Jun looked at senior sister, Yulia, expressionlessly. Senior sister, Yulia, shrugged and said, it's easy to see through this trick. If the princess had the same ability from the beginning, she wouldn't have been caught so easily, right? Jun was still silent, as if he was thinking. Then he frowned and asked, are you really the crown princess candidate? Senior sister, Yulia, immediately shyly expressed that she could really transform into the crown prince's appearance at any time. La 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 la. Well, since your highness has admitted it. The King of Swords general shook his head and thought for a moment before saying, in theory, only one glorious sun can exist in each era. Glorious sun is the fate and the end of everything. Since it's the end, there shouldn't be more than one. What do you mean? Senior sister, Yulia, was stunned subconsciously. She seemed to have thought of something and couldn't help but be moved. Maybe you already have the answer. Jun said indifferently, the crown prince and his majesty have different ideas. His majesty believes that the end is the only one, while the crown prince believes that the future should be multipolar and shouldn't be controlled by fate. But ironically, they are called the glorious sun that existed in the same era. Two different ideas, two forces that had to be assimilated and finally gave birth to this entangled relationship. But Princess Angelique seems to be the same. Senior sister, Yulia, soon found the blind spot. Jun said indifferently, in fact, the princess is the second glorious sun that appeared in the same era. What? She gave up on her own accord and completely buried the seed of the glorious sun. Later on, the crown prince's seed of the glorious sun sprouted. Why did she give up? After a moment of silence, Jun said slowly, Princess Angelique's point of view is the same as His Majesty's. To fulfill? Senior sister, Yulia, lowered her head thoughtfully and muttered. She thought of the encounter with the founding emperor in the royal forest. The founding emperor gave her the feeling that he was a guy who didn't care about life and death, not to mention having any ambition or nostalgia. A guy who was willing to punish himself by cutting wood and not letting it grow. Maybe he was also waiting for the heir to walk in front of him and take away the power of the glorious sun by himself. What a heavy family. Senior sister, Yulia, quickly figured something out and couldn't help but shake her head. If it were her, how could she bear all this? The supreme power that could only be obtained by sacrificing one's family was really like killing one's parents, sister, and whole family to prove one's Tao. Probably, I can only choose to escape? Senior sister, Yulia, let out a long sigh of relief. It was as if the questions in her heart had been completely answered. Her heart relaxed, and a thought flashed in her mind. Wait, the founder emperor has 4 descendants, and there is also a little princess who is already dead. Could it be because of the little princess, the unchanging younger sister, character in the page world of the Book of Gaia? This was the main point. She is a little different. At this time, Jun gave senior sister, Yulia, an ambiguous answer. She is not the glorious sun, from the beginning to the end, but she is related to another kind of power. What kind of power? Senior sister, Yulia's soul was agitated at this time, and her heart was beating wildly. It was as if she was opening a secret treasury that no one knew about. This kind of throbbing of the soul came suddenly. I can't say. What the f*ck? At this time, Jun's eyes were sometimes confused and sometimes chaotic, as if his spirit was greatly disturbed. Finally, Jun gently shook his head and looked at senior sister, Yulia, blankly. What did I say just now? Nothing. Senior sister, Yulia, shook her head, and the throbbing of the soul gradually calmed down, when she gave up the idea of pursuing. Then fear. Even though she had been transformed into a black soul, as an immortal creature of the void dimension, her soul was still at the immortal level. What kind of thing was it that could make him feel as if he was facing a great terror just by having the thought of prying into it? The impulse to give up the pursuit was like an instinct. Suddenly, an air-piercing sound sounded, and a figure fell from the sky like a meteor, and hit the ground directly. It was Princess Angelique. Boom! The ground was like a calm lake with a stone thrown into it, and a wave was set off. Under the spread of the wave, the buildings were instantly broken. At the bottom of the deep pit formed by the fall, Princess Angelique stood up unscathed, except for her slightly messy hair and pale face. She looked up and saw Commander J in the sky slowly descending. "Is this all you've got, Angie?" Commander J said indifferently. "If you want to correct me with this, you're still far away. It seems that you've been idle for too long. It's just a warm-up. Are you very impatient?" Princess Angelique looked calm, without any sadness or joy on her face, only the bright golden light flashed from time to time in her eyes. Commander J smiled and said, "It always forces us to calm down. I'm afraid it's really hard to make you angry now. You're really too noisy." Princess Angelique said slowly, "Don't forget, I got into contact with the power of glorious sun earlier than you." Commander J's eyes gradually softened. Princess Angelique's eyes became colder and colder. She rose from the ground and slowly flew out of the deep pit. At the same time, countless grayish-purple cubes began to appear behind Princess Angelique. It was like a collection that couldn't be completely summed up by geometry. Princess Angelique said slowly, "Come out, Laplace." Countless real and virtual cubes finally combined into a complicated and ever-changing cube, hanging high above Princess Angelique's head. One of the three ultimate god-destroying weapons of the royal family, a Laplace. She summoned the Laplace. In the distance, Emperor June's face changed slightly. "What's this thing?" Senior sister directly typed a question mark, but she also faintly felt the horror of this strange cube. "It's a god-destroying weapon on the same level as Leviathan," Emperor June said seriously. "Except for the crown prince, the other three princes and princesses each have a god-destroying weapon. Leviathan originally belonged to the deceased little princess." Senior sister Yulia clicked her tongue. "That's not right. This Princess Angelique is the second glorious son to be born, and she's also the owner of the Divine Destroyer artifact. Isn't she the perfect model for the main female lead?" Emperor June didn't speak, but his face became more and more solemn. His eyes began to move in the sky as if he was looking for something. Senior sister Yulia muttered, "Wait, that B*TCH Desolate also has a god-destroying weapon? I seem to hear you cursing me behind my back?" "Yeah, B*TCH." Senior sister Yulia froze, and a feeling of déjà vu made her turn her head subconsciously. She saw a young man wearing a baseball cap with a smile on his face. "Hi." Senior sister swallowed her saliva and greeted him stiffly. "Hi." Prince Desolate looked very happy at this moment. Prince Desolate suddenly raised his hand, and senior sister Yulia gasped instinctively. She couldn't move, as if she was tied up by thousands of chains. Looking at the palm that was slowly coming toward her head, senior sister Yulia's eyes turned black. She closed them. "Pa." His palm rested on her shoulder, neither too lightly nor too heavily. Senior sister Yulia opened one of her eyes in confusion and nervousness, and then the other. At this moment, Prince Desolate had already taken back his hand. "You got hit by my bone-melting soft palm." "What the hell was this bone-melting palm?" Senior sister Yulia resisted the urge to beat this B*TCH, but she suddenly felt like a basin of cold water had been poured over her head. How could this be *tch Prince know the moves in the subworld of 003? Did he read it when I was interrogated by Prince Desolate? I heard that you have turned into the shape of so-and-so? Prince Desolate suddenly asked while rubbing his chin. Yes, so what? Senior sister, Yulia, tried her best to hold on. Prince Desolate raised his fist and lifted senior sister, Yulia, up with one hand. Then, he raised his left leg and made a perfect throwing posture. Go! Rainbow shining meat bomb! Warwawa, the chains connected to the King of Swords were instantly broken, and senior sister, Yulia, flew out like a cannonball toward the god-destroying weapon Laplace. End of this chapter. Chapter 2241. The so-called rainbow glitter magic. Meatball, in fact, was to throw out 7 rainbow-colored phantoms. Through visual deception, it would greatly interfere with the batter's judgment, and thus throw a good ball, fog, facing the god-destroying weapon Laplace, which was a huge combination of cubes. Even if Yulia turned into 7 rainbow-colored lights, it was still useless. Even a strange scene appeared. Time seemed to go backward. At this time, the rainbow glitter magic bomb began to rewind and finally returned to the place where she was thrown out. However, Prince Desolate was no longer there. This guy seemed to have slipped away as soon as he did something bad. What happened to me? Time seemed to go backward, but her memory didn't. Senior Yulia still remembered the whole process of her being thrown out and then returning. The process even made her confused. The reversal of cause and effect is the ability of Laplace. Emperor June's voice sounded in her ears. In the relative space, a Laplace's absolute ability can completely control the chain of cause and effect. The law of cause and effect? Yulia suddenly lost her voice. Isn't it invincible? Unbreakable? Only a god-destroying weapon can fight against a god-destroying weapon, Emperor June suddenly said. Perhaps the ability of the same level. Glorious Sun is the power of destiny. Destiny against cause and effect? Senior sister, Yulia, opened her mouth and felt her scalp go numb. What kind of people are in this family? How can they casually control the top abilities in these dimensions? Primordial, her soul suddenly trembled a little, and the words that came out of her mouth didn't come out of her mouth at all. It was like an instinctive response to all the information that she knew. It was a sixth sense that transcended thinking but was based on thinking. Book of Gaia was a description of primordial. Destruction was the effect, and completeness was the cause. Cause and effect were reversed. The collapsed monument of human beings began to reverse at this moment. Every broken piece was following its original trajectory at a terrifying speed and returning to the place where it should have been. At this moment, the destroyed Holy Land was miraculously restored. People walked out of the disaster and looked at Princess Angelique, who was standing under Laplace, like a god. Even though the princess was dressed like a bunny girl, she still made people kneel down willingly. It's a miracle! It's a miracle! Goddess! Long live your highness! Long live! Waves of cheers resounded within a radius of a few kilometers around the human monument. Her Royal Highness in the sky frowned slightly. If possible, she didn't want to show her current appearance. This farce should come to an end. Princess Angelique waved her hand. Laplace, which was in an unstable state, suddenly began to rotate. Countless cubes were swept up by a whirlwind, and then scattering all over the sky of the Holy Land. Yeah, it's about time. The expression of J.'s leader became calmer and calmer as he said faintly, things have already reached this point, yet he still isn't willing to come out. It's indeed about time. There's no need to really cross his bottom line. Come back with me. Princess Angelique snorted coldly, and tens of thousands of cubes instantly shot toward J.'s leader. However, at this moment, an extremely horrifying hissing sound that shook the world interrupted everything. Princess Angelique's expression changed slightly, and she looked back subconsciously. She saw that Leviathan, which was hovering in the sky, had opened its huge, abyss-like mouth. The god-destroying weapon Leviathan, one of the 3 ultimate weapons of the royal family, was as huge as an island. At this moment, Leviathan suddenly opened its huge mouth. At the same time, the death mark above everyone's head emitted bright red light. Still can't get rid of the death declaration. The King of Swords, General Dijuan, frowned and instantly turned into a stream of light, dashing toward the sky. If they still couldn't get rid of the death declaration in the end, they could only break the heart of Leviathan. This was their original plan. However, they were delayed for a long time, and the King of Swords couldn't stay in Leviathan's heart. They hoped that they could make it in time. Above the white clouds, another battlefield was taking place. This was the home ground of the King of Swords, General Dijuan. Sky, above the sky, the King of the Sky. Every time he fought, he would pull people up into the sky, not to show off, but because since he was going to fight, of course, he had to fight recklessly on his home ground. Fushi had already fought recklessly and consumed a lot of energy. However, this fight wasn't as easy as fighting the 6-winged young man who was suspected to be from the Light Clan. It's really against the rules, an opponent blessed by the glorious sun, or something. The strange cross-shaped weapon was now in Fushi's hand. Not far away, the bewitching young man holding a long black stick was panting heavily. Fushi felt that he should change his battle strategy. "Young man, what made you last until now?" The King of Swords, General Fushi, asked slowly. However, the bewitching young man was already like a puppet from the beginning. He didn't have the slightest reaction to the King of Swords, General Dijuan's words. Fushi raised his eyebrows and said coldly, "She has invested so much power of the glorious sun in you. It's very likely that your commander won't be able to defeat Her Highness. Maybe he'll even die. Of course, it's also possible that your body won't be able to withstand the power of the glorious sun, and will die first." The bewitching young man's eyes seemed to have a trace of abnormality. Fushi chuckled and said, "Haven't you noticed yet? Your body is starting to collapse?" The bewitching young man's eyes moved, and he saw that some faintly discernible cracks had appeared on his body at some point. Just as the bewitching young man was in a daze, the cross-shaped weapon in Fushi's hand suddenly activated. All-directional exchange. Domain of souls. The space seemed to be completely enveloped in a huge gray ball. But the moment the bewitching young man came back to his senses, he was still directly trapped in this gray and black ball. Fushi stood in the gray and black ball, looking at the motionless bewitching young man trapped in the ball, and said with a smile, "There should still be some time. Let's see what it is that made you willingly become a chess piece of fate." After saying that, the heavenly monarch directly threw himself into the ball and disappeared. At that time, I realized that there was a difference between a boy and a girl, and that they had to be separated, and I was actually a boy. I was a boy. Everyone told me the same thing. My parents, my family, my friends, and Remia. Not only was I a boy, but I was also an older brother. I was very happy that Remia was able to become a holy maiden candidate. Seeing her go to the temple and receive the education of a holy maiden candidate, I felt as if I had become a holy maiden candidate myself. Family should be of one heart. Remia's pride and glory should also become my pride and glory. The thing I liked the most? The thing I liked the most was that every time Remia came back from the temple, she would tell me all kinds of things she saw during class. The etiquette of a holy maiden candidate, the responsibility of a holy maiden candidate, the words of prayer of a holy maiden candidate, the situation when a holy maiden candidate sensed the saint. Why couldn't I sense the saint's attention? I had already prayed according to Remia's instructions. I had already practiced thousands of times. As expected, because I was a boy, I couldn't do it. Why was I? Remia had started to grow up, but she was still the same Remia who always liked to tell me all kinds of details, as if there was no difference. I still liked being the person Remia confided in. I fantasized. I fantasized. This was also my personal experience, in my dreams. In my dreams, Holy Maiden Candidate Dashio came out. I often woke up laughing, and when I woke up, the night was cold, dark, and dark. The pale flames almost destroyed Remia's path as a Holy Maiden Candidate. I knew that this was because of Remia's recklessness, which led to the saint's punishment. The head priest told me that as long as I was willing to bear all of this, everything would become better. Very good, I didn't hesitate. Remia's pride and glory was my pride and glory. What I couldn't do, Remia would do it. She was me. Why wasn't I? If I was also a Holy Maiden Candidate, I wouldn't have to bear all of this, wouldn't be locked up, wouldn't be punished, and could even enter the temple and feel it openly. I shouldn't have such thoughts. I was a boy, an older brother. Remia's older brother. Actually, after accepting the fact that I was a boy, life wasn't that bad. I just hated the scars on my body. I didn't want to bathe in public bathhouses, and even when I bathed at home, I would close my eyes. They would definitely think that it was disgusting, right? Later on, I read a book, and the book said that I wasn't the only one with such a situation. It was a type of disorder called gender identity disorder. It turned out that I wasn't the only one with such troubles. I felt that I wasn't that lonely anymore. Remia, you will definitely become a holy maiden. I will always support you, no matter how hard I work. I won't give up. Do your best, Remia. I have already signed up for the Holy Guard class. I will go to the Free City with you. The two of us should work hard together. Those clothes that I secretly hid at home, I should throw them away. After all, it wasn't good. They said it wasn't good. You are very beautiful. Who is this? Is this Light? Teacher Isabel, the authoritative teacher of the City of Freedom Academy's Holy Rites class. Every Holy Maiden class was taught by her. Such a teacher, she saw me in the crowd. The moment I walked down from the train, someone saw me in the crowd. An enchanting aura, a mature body. Mysterious, charming, noble, and calm. Teacher Isabel had everything that I expected. Try it on. This is the Holy Maiden robe? What, you don't want to? I am willing. I will be confused, afraid, worried, guilty, anxious, but I will have a trace of expectation. I am looking forward to Teacher Isabel's arrival. At this time, I was completely immersed in this dreamlike relationship. Teacher Isabel's hobbies were extremely perverted. But I felt like I was also a pervert. So what? Even if you aren't accepted by the mainstream, do you still need to live for the mainstream? You are just not strong enough. Not everyone is like you, Lady Isabel. Have you ever thought about becoming a holy maiden? That night, I didn't answer this question. Lady Isabel said that I wasn't honest enough and that I was a coward, so she punished me for the entire night in her own way. Dasher. I ordered a few new robes for the Holy Maiden ceremony. Do you have time to help me get them? Only you can help me. I don't even have time to run away from the parade. No problem. I regretted it when I touched the robes that Miss Taylor personally handed to me. You actually secretly wore your sister's robes for the ceremony. You are really a pervert, Dasher. Those who don't know would probably think that you are a scumbag who loves his sister. I looked at myself in the mirror. At that time, I didn't pay much attention to what Lady Isabel said, or rather, I didn't hear it at all. I was thinking, if the me who appeared on the stage of the ceremony was like this now, would anyone accept me like this? I am going to punish you properly, young man. My body was already in Lady Isabel's embrace. I felt like I was just a doll without a soul. Tomorrow, you should go and participate in the Holy Maiden ceremony. How is that possible? You don't want to go? If you don't go, I will use despicable means to disqualify Remia. At the same time, I will also announce that you are a pervert. I took a deep breath. This kind of consequence, no matter if it was Remia or me, we obviously couldn't bear. It seemed that I could only agree. For the sake of not disqualifying Remia, Lady Isabel began to caress my face. She looked at me with a smile and said, "As long as you find a reason, it will be fine, beautiful young man." A reason? A reason for me to go on stage. Would there be anyone who would accept me like this? Probably. If I only appeared as Daphne. If I only appeared once. If I could take away a part of the attention from everyone, even if it was just a small part. After the first round, I would voluntarily give up. Just the first round was enough. Go on stage. I am Daphne. A boy.